Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public statement hearing for the Indian Point decommissioning. All attendees' lines are muted upon entry. The hearing will begin at 6 p.m. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please call 1-800-342-3330. And this public statement hearing is being live streamed. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We are here for a public statement hearing in matter number 21-01188. The matter of the Indian Point Closure Task Force and Indian Point Decommissioning Oversight Board. My name is Anthony Belcito, and I have been assigned to conduct today's public hearing. Before we start, Tom Congdon, Chair of the task force and Chair of the Decommissioning Oversight Board, would like to say a few words. Tom, you on?
Hi, everyone. This is Tom Congdon. I'm the chair of the Decommissioning Oversight Board. I'm also the executive deputy of the New York State Department of Public Service. As many of you know, the Decommissioning Oversight Board provides a venue for information exchange, oversight coordination, and public engagement on all matters pertaining to the decommissioning of Indian Point. Holtec, the company responsible for decommissioning the plant, has made clear its plans for disposing more than 1 million gallons of wastewater that remain on site by treating the water and diluting it to meet Nuclear Regulatory Commission standards, then discharging this treated wastewater to the Hudson River in the same manner as Indian Point discharged such water for the past 50+ years. Because this treated wastewater will contain the radionuclide tritium, it falls under the jurisdiction of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And given the known presence of tritium in the wastewater, many residents and elected officials in the Hudson Valley and across the state have expressed concerns about this plan. Holtec has paused its plans for an initial and limited discharge of 45,000 gallons of this water in May, in part to provide additional time for discussions with local elected officials and community members about their plans, whether alternatives were considered, and to allow the state of New York to develop a sampling protocol whereby we can obtain samples and independently test the water before any discharges occur to confirm what is in the water. Historic discharges have consistently been below 1% of allowable NRC limits for such discharges and have met drinking water standards at the discharge point, by a wide margin. That said, there are many open questions, some for Holtec, some for the NRC, some for the state. At our next meeting of the Decommissioning Oversight Board on Thursday night, April 27th at the Cortland Town Hall, we will have presenters from the NRC, the US EPA, the Department of Health, Department of Environmental Conservation, Holtec, and others to answer these questions and to respond to concerns from the community. Tonight's public statement hearing is an opportunity to get your concerns and questions on the public statement hearing is an opportunity to get your concerns and questions on the table. While I expect most of you are here to talk about the water discharges, you are free to raise any decommissioning topic. We will be sending a transcript of tonight's hearing to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And we will, as always, post the transcript on our Decommissioning Oversight Board website. I know I'm joined tonight by several members of the Decommissioning Oversight Board, including the offices of County Executive George Latimer, Senator Pete Harcum, Assemblymember Dana Levenberg, Town Supervisor Becker, Mayor Knickerbocker, and others. But without further delay, I want to turn it back to Tony Belcito, our Administrative Law Judge in the Department of Public Service, who will be administering tonight's hearing and provide some additional logistics. Tony, back to you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll begin the public statement hearing. Mr. Hubbard, if we're not on the record, can we go on the record now, please?
Yes, we are on the record.
Excellent, thank you. The statements you make today will become part of the record in this proceeding. This hearing is not an evidentiary hearing or a question and answer session, but a forum to hear comments from you. If you did not register to speak at today's hearing, but you would like your views included in the record, there are a variety of other ways to comment that were listed in the public notice for today's event. You can do so by submitting comments to the department's website, by regular mail, or by phone. Regardless of how the comments are submitted, they will be given equal consideration. Comments are encouraged by May 4th, but may be submitted and will be considered throughout the pendency of this matter. When submitting comments, please make sure to refer to the matter number, which again is 21-01188. All right, there are a very large number of people that have registered to speak today. In fact, we're over at 100. Currently, there are over 80, almost 90 attendees in the WebEx. In order to accommodate all those people, we will be limiting comments to 3 minutes per person. We also strongly encourage anyone who has similar comments or the same comments as the previous speaker to simply note that. We will register your name and that you were here, whether or not you actually take up your full 3 minutes. Again, it is on the record that over 100 people, 106 to be exact, have registered to speak tonight. And currently there are over 90 people in attendance in the WebEx. We will also attempt to list the next 10 or so speakers in the chat function of the WebEx in order to allow everyone to know who will be speaking or which speakers will be upcoming. In case anyone needs to step away from their phone for a minute, we will know the next 10 or so speakers to come up. I will call registered individuals one by one to speak. If someone is not available when I call them, I will continue to the next person. After we call your name, we will unmute your line. You should hear a tone and see that the microphone icon is no longer red. Please be reminded that if you have muted your own telephone line, you will also have to unmute your line before you begin to speak. When your line is unmuted, please state your name, and if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, identify the name of the organization. You can also tell us which town you reside in, if you would like. Once I confirm that we can hear you, you can proceed to make your comments. For anyone participating by telephone, when I call your name, I will ask you to press *3. You will have to press *3 on your phone so that we can locate you and unmute your line. Often call-in users are only identified by their phone number. So if you press *3 on your phone, it will identify which phone number is yours. It may take a little while for us to locate you and unmute your line, so please make sure to wait until you hear a beep or are notified that your line has been unmuted before you speak. If you have muted your own telephone, you will also have to unmute your line on your end. After you make your statement, I will ask you to press *3 again. Please speak slowly and clearly so that the court reporter can accurately capture your statement for the record. To the extent you have a lengthy written statement, please summarize your statement orally and submit the full written statement by email or mail. Because of the number of people who have registered to speak, we will be limiting everyone to a 3-minute time limit, which I will try to enforce very strictly. So please keep your comments as short and to the point as possible for today. With that having been said, we'll get right started. We'll get started right away. Our first speaker is Assembly Member Sarahana Trester.
My name is Sarahana Trester. I live in the town of Esopus, and I represent District 103 in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I am commenting today to urge Governor Hochul to prohibit any amount of radioactive waste being dumped into the Hudson River. The fact that we have been doing so speaks to how little care we've been putting into building a society around our health and well-being. Every day we are asked to continue exploiting ourselves and the nature that we live in just so that business can continue as usual. This is a reckless vision, and it's also short-sighted. Not only should we prohibit this dumping, we also have the responsibility right now, and I'm including myself here, to fundamentally change our energy system to become a public good, an energy system that puts people first, not shareholders, one that is built on core tenets of justice, worker rights, health, democracy, accountability, and transparency. As a co-sponsor of many of our critical climate legislation, including a bill that prohibits the discharge of any radiological agent into the waters of the state, I'll be joining my colleagues in the state legislature to ensure that we halt this dumping, and we call on the governor to do the same. We must commit to robust research to determine the correct course of action on how we deal with this waste, and we must show leadership and a serious commitment for a just and green transition that at this point really cannot wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Jeff Schumann, followed by Courtney Williams.
This is Jeff Schumann. I live in Croton-on-Hudson, New York. I just want to say that I'm speaking against Holtec's plan to discharge the wastewater from the Indian Point facility into the Hudson River. The discharge of the wastewater is a very great health and safety issue for the citizens who live and work in and on the river. The discharge will also have a detrimental effect on the tourist industry and the economy of the area. I think it's appropriate to ask the question of who would want to recreate in contaminated water. While it is acknowledged that there is not a perfectly safe solution to dealing with the wastewater, I believe the best solution at this time would be to store it in above-ground tanks until the tritium has time to decay to a much safer level, and when there is hopefully a better solution for its disposal. These tanks do need to be continuously monitored, though, for any leakage that may occur, and any leaks detected need to be dealt with immediately. I call upon the Decommissioning Board and Governor Hochul to forcefully support the Harcum-Levenberg bill that would prevent the dumping of the radioactive wastewater into the waters of New York. Please do all you can to prevent Hochul from going through with its wastewater dumping plan. I also want to note that apparently I'm also scheduled as speaker number 65, so obviously I won't need to speak then. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the heads up as well. Next, we have Courtney Williams, followed by Chris O'Connor.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Courtney Williams. I am a Peekskill resident and a parent of children in the Hendrick-Hudson School District. I wanted to thank the DOB for holding this opportunity for people to provide feedback. I also wanted to invite everyone on this call to join us in person on Thursday at 4:30 outside of Cortland Town Hall to call on Governor Cuomo to stop ignoring our concerns and start protecting our kids and our river by standing up to the NRC and halting the dumping of this radioactive wastewater and relocating students from Buchanan Verplanck Elementary School. And to give you an idea of what Governor Hochul has been ignoring, I'd like to draw your attention to Buchanan Verplanck Elementary School. It is a historically Title I school with the most Black and Latino students in the district, with the most kids getting free school lunch, the most English language learners in the district. And within 2 miles of Buchanan Verplanck Elementary School, in addition to Indian Point, which is only 4,000 feet away, we have the Hudson River, a Superfund site contaminated with PCBs. We have the Lafarge gypsum plant that sprinkles down gypsum dust on our community every night. We have the trash incinerator, the largest industrial air polluter in Westchester County. We have the Sun chemical plant, and we have the Algonquin gas transmission pipeline system, the largest of which runs only 400 feet from that elementary school. When you talk about cumulative impacts, dumping this wastewater and demolishing this plant right next to an elementary school is going to be exacerbating the health impacts of this high level of pollution. New York State's own disadvantaged community criteria found that the census tract that most students have been historically zoned to go to Buchanan Verplanck Elementary School suffer a worse burden than 98% of census tracts in New York State. This is what Governor Hochul has been ignoring. So Governor Hochul, don't exacerbate this environmental injustice. Don't let our kids pay the price for Holtec's profits. Use the power that New York State has and direct the DEC to halt this dumping and address the dangers that decommissioning poses to the children in our community, and especially the children at Buchanan Verplanck Elementary School. I look forward to seeing everyone on this call at Town Hall on Thursday to make our voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Chris O'Connor, followed by Mark Svenson.
Your Honor, I don't see Chris O'Connor electronically. Chris O'Connor, if you have called in, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you.
See any hands?
No raised hands.
Okay, we'll go to Mark Svenson, followed by Jacqueline Drexler.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to be very brief. I just want to say my name is Mark Svenson. I'm an attorney, a husband, a father, an uncle, and a resident of the town of Orangetown. What Holtec seeks to do is a grave injustice to the progress that organizations, concerned citizens, and many others have done for the past 100 years in helping make the Hudson River the cleanest it's been post-Civil War. We've made enormous progress over the years in the battle to restore the health and full economic potential of the Hudson Valley's most important natural resource. And when I learned of Holtec's actions to hasten their plan to dump 1 million gallons of carcinogenic contaminants into the river and in total disregard for the communities up and down the river, it's really appalling. And I think we have to draw a line in the sand against using the Hudson River as a continuous dumping ground. We can't we can't allow corporations such as Holtec to take advantage of our natural resource, put citizens and the Hudson River's ecosystem in harm's way, all in the name of corporate expediency. So I want to voice my opinion today, along with the many others who are on this call, who have taken action, who will be attending the meeting this Thursday, and make it clear to the governor and to other elected officials that this is unacceptable and Holtec needs to be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jacqueline Drexler, followed by Christopher Vargo.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Great. So my name is Jacqueline Drexler. I'm also speaking for my sister, Jocelyn DiCrescenzo. We live in Valley Cottage, New York. And I'm wanting to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I will be brief. We believe that the concept of dumping radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River was never part of a decommissioning plan. We cannot find a reference to this in the PSDAR, and I don't believe that this plan was ever mentioned as part of decommissioning. So number one, Holtec must test the water for all radiological isotopes and also test for other contaminants that may be on the EPA's list of contaminants that are not allowed to flow to oceans. They need to go deep into the pools. Number two, there needs to be a new, not extended or renewed speedies permit. The permit was issued for Indian Point as a working facility. It is not a working facility. Number three, there has not been an environmental review regarding long-term effects of tritium in the environment. Number four, the DEC apparently does have the authority to regulate radiological discharges, and Governor Hochul should be directing the DEC to do so. Basil Sagos of the DEC DEC announced on April 20th that, and I quote, "Protecting New York's water quality is among Governor Hochul's top priorities, and that Governor Hochul and the DEC are proud to support efforts to improve the Hudson River and benefit the communities that depend upon it for their tourism, economies, drinking water, that the Hudson River is one of our state's true gems," end quote. How is it possible to say this and allow that? Dumping. Number five, we urge the state to require a protective plan for the people, the environment, and the river. Not 1 in 500,000, but 1 in a million protection. And there should not be any discharges ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Christopher Vargo, followed by Sandy Gallup.
Christopher Vargo, if you have called in for this public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone.
Okay, I do not see a hand for Mr. Vargo, so we'll go to Sandy Gallup, followed by Joel Gingold.
Sandy Khalifa, a former New York State Assemblywoman, and I've represented the area of Indian Point for over 30 years. And I know why I have no trust in the Holtec company as they plan for the decommissioning of Indian Point. They say one thing publicly and then they do another. At the last Decommissioning Oversight Board meeting on February 2nd, a representative of Holtec indicated they would be releasing contaminated water into the Hudson River in August. They also indicated that they'd be willing to entertain a meeting with a limited group to discuss other options after hearing so much opposition growing to the plan to dump contaminated water into the Hudson River. I doubt this meeting ever happened. Next, we received notification that the release into the Hudson River would take place in early May. I believe that they wanted to move the timetable up to curtail the opposition that they were receiving from elected officials, environmental organizations, and the concerned public. Then, with all the ever-growing opposition to Holtec's plan, they announced that they would not go forward in May until they educated the elected officials and members of the community. I have no idea whether Holtec will have a community-wide meeting to educate the public. Again, I have no faith or trust that what they say they will actually do. So I'm calling on the NRC to sponsor an in-house, in-person meeting in Cortland so the community can hear from the NRC as to why they're allowing disposal in the Hudson River when the extent of the disposal is so significant. Question, will the NRC guarantee that the Hudson River will not be polluted as it was with General Electric operations, which involve major cleanup and mounting costs? And what other options is the NRC recommending to Holtec versus disposal in the Hudson River, as we've heard already about holding the water in the spent fuel pools or transferring the wastewater into storage tanks on site until a better solution is found in order to protect our incredible Hudson River. I'm sure that the NRC could bring experts in the field to this local meeting to suggest other approaches to deal with spent fuel water. Indian Point is not the only nuclear plant dealing with options for disposal of liquid waste. The bottom line is that corporations like Holtec, as well as the NRC, have the responsibility of protecting our environment and the Hudson River and not making it the dump for polluted nuclear water. I look forward to attending this NRC meeting in Westchester that I'm requesting of your agency to educate all of us about the options and to protect our gorgeous Hudson River. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Joel Gingold, followed by Nicholas Khalifa.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on these critical issues. My name is Joel Gingold from Congdon-Hudson. I serve on Sustainability Committee and as the Climate Environment Chair of CoHope Indivisible. I have also spent a nearly 60-year career as a consulting nuclear engineer, so I do have a little bit of knowledge of the problems we face. While the Holtec pause is welcome, it does not solve the problem. It merely delays the reckoning. Releasing contaminated water into the Hudson is a really, really bad idea for reasons that have been repeated numerous times and need not be reiterated. However, equal to the physical concern is the psychological damage it will do to the residents of the Hudson Valley. After decades of slowly cleaning up the Hudson, we simply do not need additional contaminants dumped into it. And the Hudson is not really a river, it's a tidal estuary. And in the absence of any hydrologic studies, we simply do not know where the dumped water will go. Many residents of this area are highly concerned, if not fearful, of the effects of the dumping. And we just do not trust Holtec with its spotty record to do the right thing, especially when its potential profits are at risk. And worse, in light of the constant relaxation of NRC regulations affecting decommissioning projects, we no longer trust the NRC to protect our health and safety. My own preferred solution is to solidify the affected liquid and bury it with the remainder of the radioactive components of the plant, as is being done at Vermont Yankee. Storage of the liquid on site for decades or centuries is not a solution, just a further delay. And I would also urge the DOB to contact its counterpart at the Pilgrim plant in Massachusetts, which has been fighting this identical battle a lot longer than we have. We will be much stronger working together. We can undoubtedly learn things from them, and they can benefit from our experience. Finally, the real problem at Indian Point and all of the other decommissioning sites is the failure of the NRC to apply appropriately rigorous regulations and oversight of the contractors. Our own federal representatives have finally taken notice of these issues, and I would urge them to join Senator Markey of Massachusetts, who's leading this charge, in the battle to make the NRC once again into a true regulatory agency, not one that abandons its responsibilities to the contractor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next we have Nicholas Khalifa, followed by Jewel Williams Johnson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
I'm a resident of Cortlandt Manor, New York. On April 30th, 2021, Indian Point permanently ceased nuclear energy operations in Buchanan. On February 2nd, 2023, Holtec International, the company in charge of decommissioning the plant, said that it plans to discharge 1 million gallons of radioactive waste into the Hudson River as early as August. The inviable and unstable nature of nuclear power as a clean alternative source of energy aside, in the 60 years since the opening of Indian Point, I find it to be a harrowing indictment of all parties involved that neither government nor private industry could think of a solution to the inevitable issue of a nuclear power plant producing nuclear waste. If this is their plan, then where did the $2.4 billion paid by taxpayers and given to Holtec to provide a planned out decommission go? It is worth mentioning that dumping 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater into a river already deemed a federal Superfund cleanup site seems to be Holtec's quickest, most cost-effective, and in their own words, best option. The best option defense brings to mind the Norfolk Southern Rail Company's refusal to check their trains' faulty wheel bearings and braking systems for the same reasons. It seems to me that Holtec is more concerned with dealing with this as quick as they can, while squashing and repressing as much publicity as possible so they can move on to their next sloppy and detrimental project, mostly unscathed, while large amounts of the population continue on none the wiser to their devastating carelessness. When has a corporation ever done anything in our best interest? It begs the question what us, the people in this community, and all the other communities around the Hudson River that will be affected by this are paying taxes for. A weak national government, a weak state government are given in the politics of disposability and disappointment. But a spineless local government is a whole nother level of bureaucratic ineffectiveness. Members of the board, you live amongst us. You are face to face with us on a daily basis. Are you going to fold and take a corporation at their word just because they say it is the best and safest option, but also their most cost effective, while at the same time becoming a casualty in the brutality of the endless cycle of a lethal revenue stream? How can a national, state, and local government responsible for allocating vast amounts of funding and a corporation, a member of the so-called free market of endless innovation and intuition, come up with no solution to a problem everyone knew was coming for the last 60 plus years? If there are any questions or comments about my position and examination from anyone in this room, I beg you not to talk to me, for I am just a concerned citizen, doing the bare minimum of my civic duty, but to the people of Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi, Hanford, Washington, Red Hill Military Facility in Hawaii, East Palestine, Ohio, and Standing Rock, and the countless communities that are suffering from skin rashes, lesions, and cancer in their lungs, throat, and brain from corporate oil fracking that has displaced and contaminated their groundwater, as well as uranium digging that results in radon poisoning. These fatal human but children tragedies are on top of the endless stacking up of hospital bills and the radical drop of property value, ensuring that not only their health and personal lives become
Your 3 minutes is up. Please try to wrap up.
But their financial options and nest eggs devastated as well. Thank you.
Next, we have Jewel Williams Johnson, followed by Kathy Meaney.
Jewel Williams Johnson, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you and unmute your line. Pressing *3 should raise your hand in the queue. No raised hand, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll go to Kathy Meaney, followed by Susan Shapiro.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Yes, this is Kathy Meaney. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Westchester. The County League and all local leagues in the county welcome this opportunity to comment on the decommissioning of the Indian Point nuclear facility. We value the well-being of our residents and the environment and are concerned about the negative impact of Holtec International's current decommissioning plans. Tonight, we share 4 concerns. The League stands with all those speaking against the dumping of radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River. With the facts as we know them, it would be reckless and irresponsible to continue to dump toxic and radioactive substances into the Hudson River. Second, the League likens this situation to that of the 9/11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Millions of people lived in the area, worked as first responders and on disaster recovery, or were corporate employees inhaling air particles and smoke fumes on a daily basis? While agencies and corporations deemed the air quality to be safe, it is evident 5, 10, 20 years later that people are still being diagnosed with cancer of all types and respiratory diseases, resulting in many deaths. The League is concerned with the demolition of the reactor towers without tenting. Like the destruction of the Twin Towers, all matter and particles will billow into the air with no reliable evidence that these clouds of particles are safe for people to inhale. This action is not worth the risk of exposure to known cancer-causing contaminants in our community. A third concern is the impact these negligent actions will have on local economies and county economic development. Will corporations want to expand into Westchester? Will people want to live in Westchester? Will tourism grow in Westchester? We think not because of this. And fourth, New York State voters approved the Environmental Bond Act in November 2022, the largest environmental bond act in state history at $4.2 billion. This measure supports environmental improvements that preserve, enhance, and restore New York's natural resources, investing in clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, and environmental justice. Will this $4.2 billion be needed to clean up the Hudson River and communities all along a contaminated river instead of the original intent? There are alternative solutions, as we've heard, to these critical issues, which we request Holtec to implement. Holtec must consider putting aside some corporate profit and take the moral high road to protect humanity and the environment. In closing, the League of Women Voters of Westchester urges you as a board, Governor Hochul, all the other powers to be, the NRC, to do everything in your power to prevent Holtec International from discharging approximately 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater into the Hudson and to tent the reactor towers at demolition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Susan Shapiro, followed by Jennifer Horowitz.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Please proceed, yes.
Okay, good evening. I'm Susan Shapiro, New York State Attorney based in Rockland County. Holtec's proposed use to the Hudson River as a sewer to dump 1.2 million gallons of radioactive effluent from the spent fuel pools is an unprecedented new use of the river. It has never been considered, contemplated, evaluated, nor was it mentioned in the PSDR. No hard look has been taken to consider the potential adverse cumulative impacts, and no health studies exist to evaluate the impacts on the wholesale dumping of this toxic waste on the biota, human health, and endangered species, specifically the sturgeon in the Havistraw Bay Nursery in the already compromised Superfund River, which provides drinking water for at least 7 communities and is the backup water supply for New York City. Nor has there been any consideration of mitigation measures as required by SEQR, NEPA, and the Endangered Species Act, such as storing the waste in double-wall tanks on site until it becomes less radioactive. ECLL Section 17 defines pollutants to include radioactive materials discharged into the water. As an agreement state under the Atomic Energy Act, the state and the governor have the authority to protect public health and safety from radiation hazards. The risk of cancer from pollutants in New York is 1 in a million. NRC's much less protective risk standard is 1 in 500. New York State has the right, authority, and obligation to enforce its more protective standards by using best technologies available. By burdening New York State with nuclear waste, the federal government's agreement under the Atomic Energy Act, for which the federal government agreed to manage nuclear waste years ago, has been breached. Due to this breach, and since the NRC eliminated the waste confidence rule, I believe that federal preemption can no longer be relied upon. If there is an ambiguity, which there is, as to whether the state has authority to protect natural resources, then the most protective measures must be enforced to prevent irreversible harm to our river. DEC's administratively extended speedies permit cannot be relied upon either, as that permit is only for an operating reactor and relies on the retirement of the Indian Point reactors, which are retired. It does not cover the dumping of all the irradiated effluent in the spent fuel pools during decommissioning. The proposed technical permit, which we have not seen even a draft of, is a new permit. And until this new permit is processed with public notice and hearings, no dumping can be allowed. Public administrative evidentiary hearings with testimony from independent scientists and experts are necessary. New York State encourages our children to conduct annual field studies and cleanups on the banks of the Hudson. Given the disparate impacts radiation has on women and children, independent health studies must be conducted before any dumping is allowed. Tritium is a known carcinogen and bioaccumulates in fish, wildlife, biota, and humans. It enters the body through inhalation, ingestion, and through
Your time is up. Please try to wrap up your comment.
Okay, tritium decays via beta particle emissions and can be more dangerous than X-rays. We demand that all the agencies and the governor and the NRC do their jobs and not allow profit interests of Holtec to take priority over public health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Horowitz, followed by Ruth Walter.
Horowitz from New Rochelle, New York. I am first and foremost an educator of elementary children and lead by example when it comes to active citizenship. I am also a volunteer with Food and Water Watch, Sierra Club, Riverkeeper, and Indivisible New Rochelle. First, I want to thank all the public officials, Senator Schumann and Gillibrand, the many state senators, including my own Senator Shelley Mayer, and dozens of county executives who have spoken decisively against the dumping of toxic waste into our Hudson River, or anywhere for that matter. It is rare for so many politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, to act quickly and speak with crystal clarity about their position on an issue. The fact that our representatives have done so means there's a clear decision that is agreed upon and that the issue is pressing and important. I am not a scientist, but it is clear that tritium and other radioactive isotopes are dangerous to our health. We cannot afford to take any risks with our water supply, whether we drink it, swim in it, catch fish from it, in addition to it being the source of life for innumerable species of plant and animal wildlife. Any negative effect on one species affects the whole ecosystem. Governor Hochul and Decommissioning Board, as key decision makers, you must actively oppose Holtec's plan and use all of your authority and influence to ensure that radioactive wastewater will be kept on site to safely degrade before disposing. Thank you for your time and attention to this critical issue.
Thank you. Next, we have Ruth Walter, followed by Tina Vols.
Yes, hi, my name is Ruth Walter. I live in Bronxville, New York, and I'm the former Westchester County legislator for District 15, which includes the village of Bronxville and parts of the city of Yonkers. I served in office from 2020 to 2022, and as the former chair of the county's Environment and Health Committee, I strongly urge the commission to deny Holtec permission to dump radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River. I'm sensitive to cancer issues because I am a cancer survivor. In addition, when my son was in high school, I attended a science competition featuring many students who were studying the Hudson River. Let's not give future science students deformed fish or dead zones to study, but instead keep Holtec from becoming GE 2.0 and further poisoning the river, its ecosystem, and the drinking water that 100,000 residents rely on. Just last month, the same operator, Holtec, agreed in Massachusetts to listen to an expert study on whether releasing 1 million gallons of radioactive waste into Cape Cod Bay would be harmful. I'd like to see the same study done here. I also feel a great deal of concern that that same number of gallons is proposed to be released. That 1 million gallons is just a placeholder. Whatever the assurances that Holtec can offer, we expect expediency will take precedence once the green light is given. If they apply for 1 million gallons, who's to stop them from releasing 40 million or 100 million? Once it's released, stakeholders will have to play catch up, and so many living things will be affected. Will Holtec find another solution? I urge them to listen to their neighbors and stick to a plan to decommission the plant that is deliberate and fair to all involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tina Vols Bonger, followed by Jessica Dyckman.
Hi, my name is Tina Volz Bongar, and I live in Peekskill, New York, and I'm a member of Resist Spectra Pipeline, and I'm a co-organizer with United for Clean Energy. And we're a grassroots coalition made up of individuals from larger groups and smaller grassrootsier people. And we want to see decommissioning done right and the best it can be. So when Poltech publicly announced that they plan to discharge the tritiated water prematurely rather than August on May 4th, our group sprung into action. And one of these that we took was to meet with our relevant state agencies. And I do want to thank Kelly Totoro from the DEC, a member of this Decommissioning Oversight Board, for making her office and others from the Department of Health and the EPA, Department of Public Service too, accessible and responsive to meeting with us as an impacted community. We hope that we can continue the spirit of community participation, especially around the speedies and technical permits, and really developing the right kind of holistic protective waste plan. We hope to return to and get some answers to other critical questions that we asked you. We also met with the AG's office, Attorney General's office, Environmental Bureau, and they answered a lot of questions about roles and responsibilities and enforcement. And we want to thank them too for being especially responsive to our environmental justice community inventory. And that was covered by Courtney Williams earlier. But before the NRC and any other state agency is going to get on or go to the DOB and explain why the NRC preempts any powers by the state to dump the 1 million gallons of tritiated water, I want to thank the 440,000 people who have signed the petition on change.org to stop this discharge. This petition is addressed to Chris Singh, who's the president of Holtec and their president of decommissioning and compliance manager. So I'm hoping that everybody at the NRC who's on this call, you'll go to change.org and just put in the search field there, 1 million gallons of radioactive waste, Hudson River, and you will see our petition. So, and this petition has, hundreds of comments by New Yorkers about what they think about this discharge into the Hudson River. And so in this public comment, I want to call on Governor Hochul, and I want her to take a few steps. And that's to establish a Hudson River Community Task Force that's made up of residents, environmental justice representatives, and local elected officials. Also to convene an expert advisory.
Your 3 minutes is up. Could you please try to wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. So Hudson River Community Task Force, expert advisory group of experts, and especially for Governor Hochul to understand the statutory and regulatory framework that we have to establish a prudent and protective administrative process to explore all options with full public input. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jessica Dyckman, followed by Ellen Weinberger.
My name is Jessica Dyckman, and I am a mother, a wife, and an environmental educator. I live in Croton on Hudson. I've lived here since 2011. And one of the things I did before I lived here was I got to sail on the sloop Clearwater and teach children for over people who cared about the environment went out of their way to change it and make it better because it was so polluted. I was shocked to hear that Holtec was going to be doing this and then that they moved up the date. I'm glad they have a pause, but it should be completely canceled. All I can say is that 100,000 people use the Hudson River for drinking water. Several municipalities have it as their secondary source of drinking water. There is swimming at Croton Point Park. There are kayakers, there are boaters. Every day I walk the Croton Landing and I see people fishing. I see dogs going in the river. I see people using the river in all sorts of ways that are healthy and responsible. And the idea that we're going back to the 50s and we're going to be using the Hudson as like an open sewer and dumping over 1 million gallons of radioactive waste. And it is horrifying to me. I can't believe that this is an example for our children, that this should be top news all over the whole country. This should be stopped. My oldest daughter says to me, Mom, in Chernobyl, that was an accident. It was a malfunction when they had radioactive waste released, right? And there was a disaster. And then in Fukushima, she says that was an earthquake, right? That was another accident that happened. And here at Indian Point, we're going to allow this deliberately to happen in America, this country we're supposed to be, doing everything so carefully with great environmental standards. And look what we're doing. What kind of example is this? I am so upset. That's all I can say, is that I'm very disturbed, and I encourage everyone to please come to the protest 4:30 this Thursday at the Cortland Town Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Alex Beauchamp, followed by Melissa Hoffman.
I was skipped.
Oh,
Hello?
I'm sorry.
All right.
Ellen Weinberger.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ellen Weinberger. I am Director of Educational Outreach at Grassroots Environmental Education, a science-based environmental health nonprofit based in New York. We call on Governor Hochul to halt Holtec's plan to discharge radioactive waste into the Hudson and to relocate the children of Buchanan-Verplanck Elementary School. Clearly, New York State's hands are not tied in this matter of Holtec's plan to discharge radioactive waste into the river. The EPA has delegated regulatory authority to the DEC, and the NRC delegated New York State regulatory authority through an agreement signed in 1962. Federal policy authorizes the NRC to enter into such agreements with the governor of any state, providing for the discontinuance of the NRC's regulatory authority and the delegation of that authority to a state to regulate materials, quote, for the protection of the public health and safety from radiation hazards, end quote. As an NRC agreement state, New York can require stricter standards than the NRC. New York State must exercise the authority it already holds to establish a protective administrative process with full public engagement to explore all evidence-based options for handling and disposal of radioactive waste material from Indian Point. This process must be informed by the guidance of a panel of qualified independent health experts. Furthermore, the city of Peekskill, an environmental justice community, has been disproportionately overburdened by a legacy of decades of pollution and has been left completely in the dark about the potential environmental safety and public health risks associated with any potential discharges of radioactive waste from Indian Point into the river. Research shows that exposure to radioactive contaminants is linked with cancer, miscarriages, genetic defects, and other adverse health effects. The DEC Commissioner's Policy 29 requires that any permit before the department must first prepare and submit an enhanced public participation plan if the proposed permit directly affects an environmental justice community. We strongly urge the DEC to hold multiple information sessions and public hearings in Peekskill and other communities along the river and implore its full compliance with CP 29 on applications of Holtec International and any of its subsidiaries and affiliates. We continue to strongly urge the appointment of 2 permanent positions on the DOB, a qualified medical expert and a community representative. The continued failure to fill these key positions demonstrates a significant unjustifiable gap in the DOB. Recent health experts forums held on January 26 and February 16 provided a critically important record of the health and safety impacts of decommissioning.
3 minutes is up. Could you please try to finish up, please?
Yes, and highlighted the lack of such medical expertise on the DOB. We strongly urge New York State to take immediate action using the powers and authority it already holds to protect the health and safety of New Yorkers without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Alex Beauchamp, followed by Melissa Hoffman.
Alex Beauchamp, I'm the Northeast Region Director at Food and Water Watch. We're a national environmental group. We have over 200,000 members that we're proud to represent here in New York. And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. You know, New Yorkers are desperate. We need Governor Hochul and our state government in general to get off the sidelines and stop Holtec from dumping radioactive water in the Hudson. And, you know, a lot of people tonight, I think, have talked about the risks of tritium a lot better than I'll be able to. So I'll just focus on one thing that's been bugging me. I was really alarmed to hear a WAMC radio story recently where the PSC was quoted extensively. And throughout the story, the agency seems to imply that the central problem here is that Holtec hasn't engaged local elected officials or the public well enough. And while that is certainly true, they haven't. The goal here isn't to get a kinder, gentler company to poison the river for us, right? We are here, New Yorkers are mad, we're up in arms, not because of public process, we're up in arms because we don't want Holtec to dump radioactive water in the Hudson. That's the central issue here. And at some point, the buck has to stop with someone. We think it stops with Governor Hochul. And look, the political support is there. Up and down the Hudson River, New York's elected officials, Democrats and Republicans have come out against this dangerous and unpopular plan. We're at 24 municipal resolutions and counting. And it's no wonder, because the Hudson is a treasure. Millions of New Yorkers rely on it, and we must not put it at risk solely to benefit those at Holtec who are focused entirely on corporate greed. And so we've seen that, right? We've seen one elected official after another come out. What we have not seen is the one person who has real power here to give us what we want. She has been conspicuously silent, and it's time for Governor Hochul to get off the sidelines. You know, we could talk all day about NRC. Anyone who is serious, who's had real dealings with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, knows what they will do here, right? They will do nothing. They will let Holtec do whatever they want. The sad truth is Governor Hochul is our only hope. And if this plan moves forward, she will be the only one that New Yorkers blame for this radioactive water in the Hudson River. It's time for Governor Hochul to step up to the plate and protect our Hudson River from radioactive waste. She can and should get this done now. We're tired of talking about process and what the governor, what Holtec could or should do. They're not going to do this on their own, right? We have to force them. Governor Hochul should make it happen. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Before we go on to the next person, I'd just like to point out that we've made it through 20 out of 106 people on the list. I do want to thank everyone for generally adhering to the 3-minute time limit. But again, if you could shorten your comments at all in consideration of your neighbors who are waiting to speak behind you, I would appreciate it. But right now we'll go to Melissa Hoffman, followed by John Pope.
My name is Melissa. I live in Poughkeepsie, New York. I'm speaking for myself and for my friends tonight that cannot be here. We all drink from and use the Hudson River water in our homes. We believe that Holtec must be stopped from dumping 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River. We cannot allow the Hudson River to serve as a dumping ground for nuclear waste. Holtec must keep the spent fuel on site and find an alternative method to safely dispose of the toxic waste. The wastewater discharge from the spent fuel would contain several contaminants, including tritium, a highly toxic and radioactive isotope that can lead to higher rates of cancer if ingested, inhaled, or absorbed through the skin. Allowing Holtec to poison the health of communities that live along the Hudson would be immoral. Anyone that cares about the lives of New Yorkers would understand that we must stop the contamination of our river. Holtec, a company that cares about its profits over anything else, will not make the right decision unless there is enough public pressure to force Holtec to make the safest choice. Over 24 New York municipalities formally passed resolutions in opposition to dumping radioactive waste in the Hudson River. There are far more people angry about this proposal to dump waste in the river than are here in this room today. We are outraged at the idea of even considering poisoning our water. However, we are not shocked. Energy corporations have been exposing the public to environmental toxins and lying about the risks for decades. This action by Holtec is nothing new, but this time the public will not be lied to. Holtec will attempt to mislead the public about the safety of its plan to expose New Yorkers to cancer-causing radiation. We will not allow Holtec to dump radioactive waste into the Hudson, and we will inform the public of Holtec's plan. We all deserve to know the risks and have the power to stop our water from being contaminated. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Pope, followed by Lee Goff.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
My name is John Pope, and I currently live in Brooklyn, and I'm a lead volunteer with Food and Water Watch. As said before, we have over 200,000 supporters statewide, and we're in complete opposition to Holtec's proposed release of radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River. Food and Water Watch calls on Governor Hochul to actively and publicly oppose this plan and use all her influence and authority to stop Holtec from dumping radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River for expedience and shareholder profit. We call on Governor Hochul to actively and publicly support the Save the Hudson bill and to stop the dumping of this radioactive wastewater. And we demand that Governor Hochul use her authority and do the right thing by the people of New York State and take immediate action to stop this. We shouldn't be dumping any amount of wastewater into the Hudson. It's already a federal Superfund site, and it's a river that provides drinking water for 7 Hudson Valley municipalities. I'm a lifelong New York State taxpayer, and I know we've spent millions, probably billions of dollars and countless hours of work to improve the Hudson to where it is today. And I ask, why would we be so disrespectful to that investment and to those efforts to allow Holtec to dump radioactive waste into the Hudson, surrounded by communities, and not for nothing, less than 50 miles upstream from the most densely populated area in the United States. Our public health, water, tourism economy around the Hudson are threatened by this dumping, and there's a simple solution: keep the waste contained on site until the wastewater becomes safer to dispose of or a reasonable option is developed. The Hudson River is not the solution to the nuclear industry and its regulators' lack of reasonable planning to dispose of wastewater, and most assuredly should not be used as a cost-cutting measure for the multinational Holtec to increase its shareholder value. I'm going to close and speak directly to Governor Hochul. We're both lifelong New Yorkers, and we both grew up in the metaphorical shadow of Love Canal. I think if we look in our heart of hearts, I think we both know that dumping radioactive wastewater into any of New York's waterways is just madness. So Governor Hochul, use your authority and stop Holtec from dumping this water into the Hudson River. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lee Goff, followed by Gilbert Sabater.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Lee Goff. I'm calling from the Port Ewan Drinking Water District of 4,500 households out of a total of 106,000 households for whom the Hudson River is a drinking water source. Our community is a New York State designated disadvantaged community and should be entitled, therefore, to remediation of existing toxic burdens and robust public forums in our community telling us how that will happen, and we call on the governor to do so. Instead, outrageously, I speak today in this call-in about contemplating radioactive waste dumping. I want to consider cumulative burdens in my comment. I remind you that the river is still contaminated with legacy PCBs. The partial dredging and quote-unquote remediation won by environmental groups made it worse by destroying the fragile balance of marine ecosystems and benthic life. This toxic PCB burden in the river will be stirred into our water intakes by Blackstone's so-called renewable and democratically permitted Champlain Hudson Power Express project. The state and federal government has not responded to our concerns on this. And now we add the threat of more radionuclides in the river to add to our existing toxic stew. I say more because our tidal river is already burdened with permitted radioactive stormwater effluent and radionuclides from when Indian Point was active, and were regularly brushed off with our Hudson drinking water customer concerns that pronounce radionuclides of no danger in our water without any evidence. No one with authority is testing it now, nor looking at historical tests as far as we're informed as members of the public. And the same is true regarding the straight up dumping of treated radioactive waste. There's little public information. Some people don't even know the Hudson is their drinking water source in our community. We wish to be heard by the governor, the NRC, and all state agencies. Richard Baroni has spoken of the business model of Holtec, which seems to be the fast and cheap variety. The pollute, then study, and maybe remediate environmental model does not work. What has history taught us, if not this? We need a new model that reverses the crass capitalism of this pollutant disposal we've lived with all these years. It's not complex. We need to more than exculpatory lip service toward vulnerable, disadvantaged communities for the river and all beings in relation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Gilbert Sabater, followed by Maddie Metro.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Gilbert Sabater. I live in New York City, and I am very concerned about what's going on right now. And the reason is because I don't hear the governor stepping in and doing anything about it, following her approval of the Champlain Hudson Power Express, which is going to create problems for the river. And she approved that. And she knew the facts, and there were other options, but she picked Chippy to be the power producer and the power source for New York City. I am shocked that she now stays silent when more damage will be done to the river if they dump this nuclear waste into the water. The science has said that it is very, very terrible for pregnant women and for children. Why wouldn't she, as a woman, be concerned about this issue? I'm a businessman and I know about making money, but this is not about making money. It's about protecting a community that she was sworn in as governor to protect. So please, Ms. Huckle, do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Maddie Metro, followed by Therese Singh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
This is Maddie Metro, straight out of New York City, and the river runs through here too, just like it, one way or another, runs throughout our entire planet. I kid you not, I was talking to my friend Gregory, a good dude and a real guy, and told him about the fact of this current disposal plan that Holtec wants to dump radioactive waste in the Hudson. That was on April 14th, and I know this is April 25th, but he looked at me like I was talking to him like it was April 1st. In fact, he didn't really, and I don't really know if he believes that something this amazingly, absurdly, absolutely horrific as this, 160 years of guaranteed radioactive waste decomposing in the Earth's Hudson River is actually, and was actually not, an April Fool's Day joke. Holtec, members of the Decommissioning Agency, and Governor Hochul, if this includes you, that are even considering this a viable and acceptable solution, let me ask you one question. Is your money that good? Will it buy you forgiveness? Do you think that it could? I think you will find when your death takes its toll, all the money you made will never buy back your soul. Shout out to all those others on here who stand with me, Food and Water Watch, Riverkeeper, Sane Energy, and who don't stand for this absolute nonsense. It's radioactive waste. I disagree with some of my compatriots on this call, and we don't need any studies to know that dumping the contaminated water into the river is a death knell. How is this even a freaking option? We know much safer options to handle the waste. Freaking use them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Therese Sinks, followed by Megan Lazaro.
Teresa Sinks, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so we can unmute you. Your line has been unmuted. Is this Teresa Sinks?
This is she. Yes, my name is Therese Sinks. Sorry about that. There was a delay. My name is Therese Sinks. I am the parent of 2 children in the Hendrick-Hudson School District. Much of what I wanted to say has been said this evening and in prior meetings regarding the dumping of nuclear waste into the Hudson River. To summarize, I'll simply quote my 11-year-old daughter, who was asked for a quote when she attended the press conference at Croton Point Park last week. And she looked at the person and she said, "This is a dumb idea. Why do we actually have to say that out loud?" That said, in watching all of the DOB meetings that are publicly available, I have lost count of how many times it has been stated by Mr. Lochbaum and others that the NRC is, quote, not doing their job or totally ineffective. And he even implied that perhaps they should seek employment at McDonald's in the September 22nd, 2022 meeting. To hear this about the federal agency overseeing this process over and over again is absolutely terrifying. So where does that leave us, the people living here? We're supposed to trust the NRC? Holtec? Impossible. I am imploring, pleading, begging Governor Hochul as a parent and as a mother to use her influence to, 1, stop the release of this water into the river, 2, ensure that a parent and a pediatrician are appointed to the DOB, 3, address the fact, please, that there is an elementary school located in the middle of all of this, alongside a gas pipeline. Please engage with our school district to find a solution. And as was said, number 4, we were all assured that the air was safe after 9/11. We all know that wasn't true. I don't want my children to be the subject of a future Netflix documentary a decade from now. It is Governor Hochul's obligation to protect our environment, our children, and our communities. If she does nothing, that will be her legacy. Governor Hochul must be vocal and stop this from happening. As the first site to have a decommissioning oversight board, the people of New York State and the nation are watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Megan Lazaros, followed by Peggy Kurtz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hello, and thank you to the board and the task force for holding this hearing. My name is Megan Lazarus, and I am a born and raised New Yorker, and I currently live with my family in Beacon, New York, and I am a member of Beacon Climate Action now. I am asking for Governor Hochul to actively oppose Holtec's plan to dump waste into the Hudson River and use all of her authority and influence to stop it. This is a critical decision that will have long-lasting and reaching effects, some we may not know for years to come, as others have mentioned. And in a time where the future seems to be less and less predictable, I would find it prudent of our governor to ask what this decision will cost us down the line. What will we not be able to get back or build back? This decision is just one of the many that those in power are faced with making, but each decision does not live in a vacuum. We understand that the decision to dump radioactive waste in our water system is not simply a technical or scientific issue, but rather a deeply moral one. And we recognize that this proposal is not just about the disposal of waste, but about the health and well-being of our families, our neighbors, and the generations to come. My family welcomed a baby girl into this world about 20 months ago. She's curious about the world she lives in, she's eager to explore, and she's happy to just catch a glimpse of a dog on the street or a butterfly in the yard. And ironically enough, we were very much looking forward to letting her wade in the Hudson this summer, but I bring her up because I had such a hard time coming to terms with bringing her into this world. It was and sometimes is still very scary, but I told myself that I had to have faith that those in power will understand that our babies are counting on them to make decisions that protect them. I cried from relief and hugged my daughter when Governor Hochul publicly vowed to protect abortion rights in New York. She talked about her own granddaughter and how she refuses to let her have to fight for rights that women have won already. She took a stance on what she knew was right, and we need her to do this again. Governor Hochul, our babies are counting on you. My baby is counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Peggy Kurtz, followed by Nivo Rivera.
Peggy Kurtz, if you have called in for the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you. No raised hands.
Thank you. Next we go to Nivo Rivera, followed by Leslie Sear.
Nivo Ravido, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you. No raised hand.
Leslie Seary. If you've called, please press *3 on your phone.
I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Leslie Seary and I live in Irvington, and I'm a mother, a wife, a teacher, and a concerned citizen. I echo everything everyone has said in this hearing, and I swim in the river. My children play on the banks of the river, and that will all change if this happens. And I just can't support this effort enough to stop the dumping of the radioactive waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stephen Curtis, followed by Robert Markuski. And Stephen Curtis, *3 on your phone if you've called in. Okay, we'll go to Robert Markuski.
Yeah, this is Steve Curtis. I just got unmuted, I think.
Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Curtis. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Steve Curtis, and I'm affiliated with Nuclear New York, and I am a health physicist by education and training. And that means I understand how radiation affects the environment. And I really want to applaud you guys for sticking up your passionate defense of the environment. It's very, very important. I myself am an environmentalist. But it's important in these things that we focus our energy on things that are really important. And I heard tonight that you have PCBs in the Hudson River, and that is certainly something you should be alarmed at. But I want to give you a little different perspective about tritiated water. First of all, it is not radioactive waste, and it is not toxic waste. In fact, it's very, very benign in the amounts that are going to be dumped in the river. I've looked at them. There are drinking water standards that include standards for tritiated water, and those standards are set at a pace that is way, way, way low in any kind of radioactive response. In fact, it's about 1/100th of what you get walking around the earth every day. And that's if you drink water every day for a year. That rate is a 1/100th of you get just by living on the earth. And so I hate to see you misdirect all your attention to things that really are so benign and so inconsequential that they don't even raise to the level of concern. I understand your concern that Holtec might be trying to save money, but I don't think they do. I don't think that any expense that you pay to protect your stuff from something you don't need to costs you all that much more. And you were the ones that wanted to decommission the Indian Point nuclear power plant, and now you seem to be throwing something in the way of doing that. So I'm kind of in favor of the governor kind of sticking up for what's really, really the best for you guys. Who wants to spend a whole bunch of your tax money on something that's not necessary? So I can really kind of assure you that that anything that's within the EPA drinking water standards is way below anything of concern that you have, and all this stuff that you're talking about here. I wish you'd get informed by somebody who understands this science, because it's not really worth your effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Robert Makuski, followed by Paula Washington.
Robert, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you.
Anyone? All right. Robert Markowski?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Markowski, and I am a teacher at the New York Harbor School in New York City. I'm the instructor of a Marine Affairs and Policy and Advocacy course, a class built around stakeholder engagement and natural resource management. I'm just going to say something briefly to get started, but I'm just going to read some student statements. You know, as a teacher that teaches advocacy and policy around our waterfront, you know, I often have to be neutral, right? I'm not in the business of giving kids their political views. But when I presented them this issue unanimously, regardless of it being an isotope or radioactive waste or whatever it is, they all agreed upon that nobody should be putting anything in the Hudson that the EPA has to have standards for of levels, permissible levels that are non-harmful to humans or marine life. So also too, when someone walked in my classroom today, a random visitor to observe me teach, they picked up some materials that I had created for my students to engage with. And they thought I created a mock exercise. They couldn't believe that it was 2023 and this was still our conversation. So some things that some students said was dumping toxic waste in the harbor that eventually will be near schools, homes, and hospitals would be inhumane. Another student said dumping waste into the Hudson River will harm aquatic life and increase the severity of countless problems affecting the Hudson that thousands of people are trying to fix. Another student said, you're literally killing the planet you're living on for profit. You saving money means absolutely nothing when we are all dead. Another student, don't allow this to happen because the waste can affect people. Many people can get cancer if radioactive keys being poured into the river. You know, and I know that there's, right, from the last speaker, right, what was said. So this other student says, this affects all of New York. The river is a lifeline of the state. No one should put anything in it that is considered waste, regardless of its acceptable levels. Another student says, dumping hazardous waste in the water we've been trying to restore will ruin efforts and kill the ecosystems we need for the harbor restoration. Our future generations and many more to go will be negatively affected. And the list goes on. Another student said, why is dumping industrial waste into the Hudson River even a question? And unanimously, what the students sort of wrestled with is, regardless of what the EPA standards are, there's alternatives that can be done. Dumping, what they were questioning is, they thought putting waste in the harbor, that question was over. And they actually did a mock exercise with the GE activity. And it's,
Sir, your 3 minutes is up. Could you please try to wrap up your comments, please?
Yeah. The students encourage Governor Hochul to take power and stop this, as well as support Dana Levenberg's bill. You'll be seeing more testimonies from the students and their viewpoints on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Paula Washington, followed by Donna Josephs.
Paula Washington, if you have called in to the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Donna Josephs, followed by Matthew Goya.
Donna Joseph, if you have contacted the public statement hearing by phone, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Matthew Goya, if you've called in, please hit *3 on your phone so we can unmute you. All right. Ronald Zarilla.
This is Ronald Zarilla calling from the city of Newburgh.
Please proceed.
Thank you. As a representative of Outdoor Promise and our constituents, we strongly oppose Holtec's decision to discharge wastewater into the river. The Hudson River is a vital resource for our region, and it should not be used as a dumping ground for any waste. This river has been used as a disposal site in the past and is already designated a Superfund site. And we must take all precautions to protect and prevent further contamination. And we cannot prioritize profit margins and expediency over the health and safety of our communities that live around the river. It's home to a diverse range of fish, wildlife, and plant life, and provides drinking water to many people. It's a crucial location for our outdoor activities, boating, fishing, swimming. And the environmental impact of this wastewater is alarming for us, and we're afraid of the consequences that might have for our health and safety for our local communities. My hometown, the city of Newburgh, is already facing a lot of environmental justice issues, and we don't want them to be further impacted by these decisions. We cannot allow Holtec to further harm our community and exacerbate existing environmental injustices. So we support the call to halt these discharges and create a means of storing the contaminated water safely in tanks on the site, while safer disposal. And we must be cautious to prevent any other unnecessary risks to our communities. The Hudson River is such a precious resource for all of us, and we must protect it for future generations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Victoria McFadden, followed by Justice McRae. Victoria McFadden.
Victoria McFadden, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you. No raised hand.
All right, we'll go to Justice McCray, followed by Ryan Pickering.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Fantastic, thank you. My name is Justice McCray, and I am an elected city council member representing the 2nd Ward of the city of Beacon. It's the southwest corner of the city that directly borders the Hudson River. For those who don't know, Beacon is a small, beautiful city between Albany and New York City, and it's a not-so-hidden gem nestled between a mountain and the river that I've come to love and I'm here to advocate for. On April 10th, our city council unanimously passed a resolution in opposition to the discharge of contaminated water into the Hudson River and in support of a ban of any radiological agent being released into the waters of New York. While our council doesn't agree on everything, this was a very easy decision for us to make. The public's concern is not just relegated to my city. Residents across the state have been so alarmed that Beacon is just one of over 20 municipalities to pass a resolution condemning Holtec and its actions in less than 6 weeks. On behalf of the residents of my city, please prioritize the health and safety of New Yorkers and the well-being of the river. Do not allow Holtec to discharge any contaminated water or toxic agents into the river. I, as a city council person, am doing everything in my power to prevent this, and I am asking Governor Hochul to step up and stop this dangerous plan from continuing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Ryan Pickering, followed by Keith Shue.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hello, Decommissioning Oversight Board and members of the public. My name is Ryan Pickering. I was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, and my family lives downriver of Indian Point Energy Center. As an environmentalist who has hiked the trails of Westchester, Rockland, Ulster, and Dutchess counties, I will forever protect the ecosystems of the Hudson Valley. I am disappointed to hear my fellow environmentalists, educators, and community leaders obstructing the decommissioning process due to the final release of water from the plant. It is well documented that Indian Point has been releasing water with the same trace amounts of tritium into the river since 1974 as part of its standard operations. Indeed, all nuclear power plants release trace amounts of tritium like Indian Point. Thankfully, tritium is a naturally occurring isotope of hydrogen with 2 extra neutrons attached. After 12 years, tritium becomes helium. This is not nuclear waste. This isotope is created in nature every day when sunlight interacts with salt water in the oceans around the world. Despite what some have implied, the level of tritium in question is, and always has been, completely safe for the plants, animals, and humans of the Hudson Valley. We all know this is true after living our lifetimes on this river. It is painful to hear the fear in the voices of the callers before me. I urge you all to research tritium to gain peace of mind, knowing that our community is and always has been safe from radiation. As protectors of the Hudson, the best thing we can do for the environment and our communities is to support the decommissioning effort. This includes releasing the last bit of water left on site, as the plant has done for decades. We cannot allow unfounded fears to impede the livelihood of our communities and our ecosystems. Release the water, decommission the plant, grant our communities closure, and allow our ecosystem to move on. Thank you.
Next, we have Keith Shue, followed by Nora Cruz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Keith Shue. I'm an engineer with New York Energy and Climate Advocates, an organization that understands the reality of climate change and the need for solutions that work in the real world. That's why we support nuclear power. First, let me say that I'm not worried at all about tritiated water at Indian Point. These are light water reactors. The concentrations are incredibly small. There is no public danger. Now, some may say that any radiological release is unacceptable. Well, if that's how you feel, then you should never have a dental x-ray. You should never fly in a plane because of radiation at high altitudes. You should not go into a building made of granite. In fact, you shouldn't even exist because even the decay of naturally occurring potassium-40 in the human body creates radiation. In fact, that decay, which happens about 4,600 times per second in the body, has about 70 times more energy content than tritium. It's been estimated that drinking a cup of tritiated water from Pilgrim Nuclear Plant would give you about as much radiation as eating 6 bananas or flying in a plane for 12 minutes. Indian Point is probably about the same as that. And nobody is drinking water right out of the plant anyway. The proposed diluted release is comparable to what has occurred for the past 40 years with no problem. This is a total, absolute non-issue. The purpose of this decommissioning board was to educate, but that's not what's happened. Instead, you've allowed information and hysteria to run rampant. It's shameful. The only winners are groups like Riverkeeper that rake in donations by scaring people and political opportunists who grandstand with absurd legislation to prohibit discharge of any radionuclides. Well, everything contains some amount of radionuclides, so basically that's a ban on everything, including water itself. First of all, this nonsense distracts from the real crime. The fact that fossil fuel combustion went from 70 to 90% of electricity generation downstate when Indian Point closed, pumping 10 million tons of totally avoidable greenhouse gas emissions into the air every year and prolonging the exposure of environmental justice communities to pollution. Keeping Indian Point could have also saved 100 square miles of forest and farmland from being plastered with solar panels from China. Those are the real environmental impacts, not tritium. My recommendation is that you let science enter the room. Some are saying that they want to hold tritiated water on site for 12 years because 50% will decay by then. But there's no basis for that demand without knowing how much is there now. I suggest that you simply ask Holtec how many curies are in the pool, because then we can have an intelligent conversation about the concentrations and durations of relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Nora Cruz, followed by Brian Wilson.
Nora Cruz, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you. No raised hand.
Then we'll go to Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Awesome, thank you. Hello, Indian Point, DOB, New York State, DPS, and fellow citizens. I'm Brian Wilson with the New York Energy Alliance, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to comment on Holtec's plan to discharge water from the Indian Point site into the Hudson and the general response to said plan. The process is degraded into a win-win charade for everyone except the working people of New York State. For the quote-unquote environmental NGO sounding the alarm and opposing this plan, this is just another chance to get their digs in against nuclear power while also trying to make it just that much harder to build another plant within the state. For Holtec, this just becomes another way to make money on the decommissioning of Indian Point. The water is going to be dealt with, and whatever ridiculous hoops they're made to jump through, they're going to be paid for by you and I. For politicians, this becomes an easy photo op to go against the quote-unquote big bad polluting corporation. They know a new nuclear plant will not be built in this state until the aforementioned obstructionist NGOs are pushed out of the way by labor and industry, so lose nothing in being against discharging of the water. The working people of New York, however, are only left with a lackluster and expensive theater performance. The decommissioning process should not be allowed to be bogged down by spotlight chasers trying to grab a megaphone. It should instead be executed in a reasonable and timely manner so that New York's focus can switch from decommissioning to commissioning the cheap, plentiful, and reliable energy it needs for its industries and people to prosper. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Laura Schindel, followed by Diane Meichener.
Hello, my name is Laura Schindel. I'm a senior organizer with Food and Water Watch. I'm joining thousands of New Yorkers today to desperately urge Governor Hochul to end her silence on this important issue and stop Holtec from dumping radioactive waste in the Hudson River. Something I'd like Governor Hochul and all elected officials to know is that I've been organizing on environmental issues in a professional capacity for over 10 years. And in all that time, I've talked to many thousands of people on a variety of public health and environmental threats. And in all that time organizing on such a wide breadth of issues, I have never seen such a fast and unified public outcry against a proposal as I've seen against Holtec and this radioactive waste egregious plan. In just the last 6 weeks, over 21 municipalities have passed resolutions. Dozens of legislators at all levels, including Republicans across the aisle, from town councils to state legislators and Senators Schumann and Gillibrand, they've all spoken out against this project. And over 500,000 New Yorkers have signed petition signatures. When we were tabling in Ossining for an Earth Day festival a few days ago, it was so easy to talk to people about this issue because most already know about it and are outraged. And those who didn't, as soon as you say radioactive waste in the Hudson River, they are immediately opposed. This is not a complicated issue. Radioactive waste dumping in a beloved river that so many rely on is an egregious plan, and it should have been dead on arrival. But despite how obvious it is to every New Yorker, Governor Hochul, the person who has the authority to stop this, remains silent. This is political suicide. She only won her statewide election by a margin of less than 300,000 people. We have over 500,000 petition signatures. Governor Hochul needs to stand up and stop Holtec. And the waste should be stored on site, and we can figure out a safe way to deal with it. But Holtec has proven that they are not good actors, and even if they were, no radioactive waste belongs in our Hudson River. This is a clear-cut issue, and I thank you for holding this hearing, but this shouldn't be necessary, and Governor Hochul needs to stand up or she will be hearing a lot of consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Diane Mitchner, followed by Elaine Weir.
Diane, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press star 3 on your phone so I can locate you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll go to Elaine Weir, followed by Kim Fraczek.
Elaine Veer, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press star 3 on your phone so I can locate you and unmute you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll go to Kim Fraczek, followed by Suzanne Pollard. Kim Fraczek?
If you have contacted them, if you have reached the public statement hearing by phone, please press star 3 on your phone.
All right, we'll go on to Suzanne Pollard, followed by Emily Feiner.
Evening.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed. I can no longer hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Suzanne Pollard. I live in Nassau, Rensselaer County, New York. I'm a volunteer at Food and Water Watch and a board member of Community Advocates for Sustainable Environment. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to provide my public comment regarding my opposition of the plan by Holtec to dispose of radioactive waste in the Hudson River. I've lived in the Hudson River Valley for over 50 years, and within that time have fought to keep the water clean. As far back as 1973, when we stopped the proposed construction of 3 power plants in Greene County, including nuclear, coal burning, and pumping storage facilities. I've supported efforts to protect water quality as a source of drinking water for humans and a vital ecosystem for fish and wildlife. Disposal of radioactive waste has never been resolved. It's been 50 years, and we still are looking at what to do. And it will take decades to degrade, no matter how we bury it or contain it. Holtec knows this all too well and is not facing the hard realities of the costs they must incur. Their corporate bottom line should not take priority over the public health and safety of New York residents or the well-being of the river and life that it supports. I'm asking Governor Hochul to support the passing of the Save the Hudson bill in the state legislature, which will stop Holtec from dumping 1 million gallons of radioactive waste into the public drinking water source to so many communities depending on clean waters of the Hudson River. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Emily Feiner, followed by Ken Schless. Emily Feiner, if you...
I am a resident of Nyack in Rockland County and have lived most of my life on the Hudson River. It's been a really important part of my life and continues to be so. I am a volunteer with Food and Water Watch, and I am also a member of Rockland United. And, you know, somebody earlier talked about the Clearwater, and I remember in the 60s raising money to build the Clearwater and listening to Pete Seeger and other community members talk passionately about how important it is to clean up our river. I have also been around long enough to remember when the GE company said that the PCBs didn't pose any risk to us and we could just leave them at the bottom of our river. And in fact said that they wouldn't cause any problems when they were dumping them there in the first place. I worked for many years. I had the honor of working with veterans at the VA hospital in Montrose, which is really a neighbor to Indian Point. And our nation's veterans have been hammered by environmental exposures, so much so that the United States Congress had to pass the PACT Act to increase the number of conditions that veterans could claim disability for. And I don't think it's fair after they have already paid a disproportionate price to expose them to any more risk and to have their neighbor dumping radioactive waste into the river seems to me to be very burdensome on our veterans. And on that campus, there are several residential programs. So veterans are staying there in some cases for weeks and in other cases for months. And we owe them that we protect them because we failed to do so in the past. GE and Holtec have also not protected us in the past. And I don't think that they deserve the benefit of the doubt. I think we need to say no. I'm calling on Governor Hochul to put an end to this plan. And we need to be a watchdog that insists that Holtec dispose of this in a way that doesn't harm the public and that doesn't cost us any more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ken Schless, followed by Krishna Parmasar.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Ken Schless. I'm a father of two. I grew up across the river from Indian Point in Rockland County, and I'm a volunteer with Food and Water Watch. I'm here to express deep concerns about Holtec's plans to dump radioactive waste into the Hudson River. I've lived my entire life with the fear of an accidental radiation leak from Indian Point. Never did I think that a private for-profit corporation entrusted with our welfare would willfully propose to make this nightmare real. Now I live downstream in New York City, where not only do people regularly fish for food as well as sport, but there are multiple active plans to open public beaches on the river. To consider dumping radioactive wastewater in the Hudson is unconscionable. Over 100,000 people in 7 municipalities rely on the Hudson for drinking water. Despite being the home to a wide array of fish and wildlife, it's still an active federal Superfund site. Holtec has no moral right to dump any amount of toxic, carcinogenic radioactive tritium into an already struggling river that is vital to the health and welfare of so many. I urge Governor Hochul to take immediate action to stop this dangerous plan. New Yorkers won't stand for it, and we won't allow the Hochul administration to sit on the sidelines and let it happen. This dumping threatens our public health, our water, and the tourism industry centered around the Hudson River. Holtec simply wants to appease its shareholders and do what's convenient for them. Their attempt to rush the dumping of their radioactive waste into the Hudson exemplifies a record of lazy disregard in prioritizing the health and safety of our communities and the well-being of the Hudson River. They've shown they cannot be trusted to handle this waste responsibly. Nearly 500,000 people have voiced their opposition to Holtec's plan, along with their local, state, and federally elected representatives. 21 municipalities and 3 counties have passed resolutions opposing the dumping. We demand engaged and active leadership from you, Governor Hochul, and the Decommissioning Commission to ensure that this plan is defeated. We urge Governor Hochul to support the Save the Hudson bill now in the state legislature and make sure it will become law. Her state agency should not pass the buck on stopping Holtec. They must take action to protect our river. This issue must be taken seriously. We must protect the health and safety of our communities. We must not allow the Hudson River to become a dumping ground for radioactive waste. We must stand up to Holtec and any company that prioritizes their profits over the well-being of our environment and our communities. Thank you for your consideration and your commitment to protect our communities and the environment.
Thank you. Next is Krishna Parmasar, followed by Gigi Neeson.
Krishna Parmesar, if you have contacted the public statement hearing by phone, please press *3 on your phone. Your line has been
hello?
unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Please proceed.
Okay. My name is Elaine Weir, and I live in Westchester County, and I'm a volunteer for Food and Water Watch as well. My family enjoys swimming and boating on the Hudson River, and many times we actually pass Indian Point Power Plant while we're on the river. I'm very concerned about the dumping of radioactivity waste into the Hudson. This waste is toxic and can lead to higher rates of cancer. The Hudson River also provides drinking water for 7 municipalities, making it even more likely New Yorkers will be exposed to the dangerous waste. And I know myself am a cancer survivor from the World Trade Center attacks, so I'm very sensitive to this subject of pollution. A safer solution is to keep the waste in appropriate containers on site. This will allow time for the radioactivity to degrade. Over a few decades, when it's a lower level, the waste can be disposed of properly. The decommissioning of Indian Point needs to prioritize the health and safety of New Yorkers. The DEC needs to step up and protect New Yorkers. And I urge Governor Hochul to stop the dumping of radioactive waste into the Hudson, and also to support and help pass the Save the Hudson bill that will do the same. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have a Gigi Neeson?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please
Great.
proceed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gigi Neeson. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm against any dumping of radioactive waste in the Hudson River. Whether it's from Holtec or any other company, Governor Hochul needs to step up and reject this plan. The state must take the lead to develop a protective plan with public input on the best way to deal with the tritium wastewater. It is long past time for Holtec and the NRC to stand down and support the state's legal authority to develop a plan which safeguards the impacted communities along the Hudson River. And Governor Hochul needs to come out and take immediate action to stop this from happening. This past year, my partner got an unexpected tumor, which disabled her for several months, and now she is still dealing with paying back her hospital bills from the surgery she needed to get better. We all know that the dumping of radioactive waste and tritium is a radioactive hydrogen, and like all radioactive substances, it's a carcinogen, a mutagen, and will cause many different health defects and cause a lot of people a lot of harm. And so I would not wish anyone to be in her situation or any of the other people that have testified, that have, been through cancer, have been through health issues, because we all know that this dumping would lead to many others being in her situation or worse. So I'm calling on Governor Hochul to please step up to this urgent issue and stand up to Holtec and these private companies. No more dumping of waste in communities, and we need full transparency and public input on any of these kinds of initiatives from private companies. Thank you.
Next we have Livy Mann, followed by Damian Andrade.
Levy Man, if you have called in to the public statement hearing, please press star 2 on your phone. No raised hand.
Okay, next we have Damian Andrade, followed by Christine Lentinello.
Damien, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press star 3 on your phone so we can unmute you. No raised hand.
Can we unmute Ann Finneran, please?
I live in Hurleyville, New York. I am co-chair of the Water Issues Committee for the Sierra Club Atlantic chapter, but I am speaking as a private citizen. I have been very intrigued by many of the comments on this call, and I thank you for providing the public comment period. A friend of mine once wrote a book. It was called Believing is Seeing. And that seems to be what's going on here. There are different scientific perspectives. I am not a scientist. I can't really speak to the actual science. I don't know if the water is just tritiated. I don't know if tritiated water is safe. I don't know if it's not safe. I don't know if there are more radioactive elements that are going to be released. What I do know is that once the water is released, it can't be put back. So I am somewhat supportive of the idea of storing the material at site or at another site rather than putting it in the river and potentially causing risk to countless New York citizens. 21 municipalities, including 3 counties, have written resolutions in opposition. The Holtec has a sketchy past as far as safety goes. In fact, the letter from our senators quotes that, saying that they allowed an NRC inspector into a place with notoriously high dose rates, despite the expected presence of radionuclides. So I don't think they're a particularly trustworthy organization, and I need to make sure that if anything is going into the Hudson River, that it better be safe. And I think that Governor Hochul really needs to make sure of that. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak. And I think I'm going to go make popcorn for the rest of this comment period. Thanks so much. I'm done.
Thank you. Next is Mary Finneran, followed by Joanna Kahn.
Hello.
Hello, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Mary Finneran. I am Ann Finneran's twin sister, and we have virtually identical voices. So I wonder about what Mr. Pickering said about not taking the 12 years to store it on site if it just turns into helium, which is a benign substance. I don't know about tritium, like my sister. But I want to quote a couple pieces from a Washington Post article from May of last year that was mostly about the Oyster Creek plant that Holtec has bought. Starting my quote, and I'll be jumping paragraphs. Over the past 3 years, Holtec has purchased 3 plants in 3 states and expects to finalize a 4th this summer. This company is seeking to profitably dismantle them by replacing hundreds of veteran plant workers with smaller, less costly crews. While no one has been seriously injured at Oyster Creek, the missteps are spurring calls for stronger government oversight. In the nearly 3 years Holtec has owned Oyster Creek, regulators have documented at least 9 violations of federal rules, including the contaminated water mishap, falsified weapons inspections report, and other unspecified security lapses. That's at least as many as were found over the preceding 10 years at the plant when it was owned by Exelon, one of the nation's largest utility companies, according to the Post Review of Regulatory Records. While the decommissioning organization may seem new, the professionals staffing the company are experienced nuclear professionals. I will say that was Holtec's reply. Holtec is, however, pioneering an experimental new business model during the lifetime of America's 133 nuclear reactors. I'm sure all of you know this. Ratepayers paid small fees on their monthly energy bills to fill decommissioning trust funds intended to cover the eventual cost of deconstructing the plants. The trust funds now total about $86 billion, according to a San Francisco-based investment consulting firm. after a reactor is dismantled and its site cleared, some of these trust funds must return any money left over to ratepayers, but others permit cleanup companies to keep any surpluses profit, creating incentives to cut costs at sites that house some of the most dangerous materials on the planet. This is where I think Holtec is going with wanting to dump this water. They want to dump this whole project. They want to get the decommissioning done as quickly as possible so that they can pocket the profits. I think this is heinous, and I honestly do hope that Hochul or whomever is in power stops this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joanna Khan, followed by Serena Nagy.
Joanna Khan, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone. Your lines are muted.
Hello, this is Joanna. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Khan, a concerned citizen. I live along the Hudson River in New York City. I am here to speak to you about the discharge of nuclear radioactive waste from spent fuel pools, dry cask storage, and/or any other accumulation sources at Indian Point into the Hudson River. Governor Hochul must actively oppose the Holtec Corporation's plan for removal of nuclear waste from Indian Point, which includes dumping radioactive nuclear wastewater into the Hudson. The governor must use all of her authority and influence to stop this dumping. It is imperative the governor support the Save the Hudson bills currently in the New York State Senate and Assembly. Holtec's plan is dangerous to humans and to the Hudson River's entire ecosystem. There is a ripple effect in endangering life and fin and more in and along the river, an estuary outlet to the Atlantic Ocean. Holtec's plan is not acceptable. It is a travesty to spew poisonous effluvia into our river, to wreak havoc and generate the sad consequences which will affect our generation and all subsequent generations by inflicting interminable suffering. Please note, the radioactive wastewater can be kept on site at Indian Point in double-sided containers for decades before disposing it. In continuing to store it as such, fuller studies on tritium, a highly toxic and cancer-causing radioactive isotope, is kept away from harming the ecosystem while we learn. The Hudson River provides drinking water to municipalities in the Hudson Valley, as people have pointed out. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not a given that we poison our shared environment and biosphere. It is imperative that the NRC and all federal and state officials and monitoring agencies charged with our and the planet's safety and hence longevity get the message and the people's demand that they must act to stop Holtec's plans right now. Please, each of you, do what you can to prevent the discharge of nuclear radioactive waste into the Hudson River. Please support experts and the greater public's responsible and educated thoughts on this matter. Please recommend to Governor Hochul that she do all she can to get the legislature's bills passed and then act to ensure their enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Serena Nagy, followed by Matthew Lipchick.
Am I muted? I'm good.
Good.
Serena Nagy, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can unmute you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll move to Matthew Lipchick, followed by Alan Hunter, or Hooter.
Hello. Hello, this is Matthew Lipchick. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Lipchick. I'm a resident of Brooklyn, New York. I'm a volunteer with Food and Water Watch. I just want to say that I strongly oppose Holtec's plan to dump radioactive waste into the Hudson River, or anywhere, anywhere for that matter. Holtec, a privately held for-profit corporation, wants to cut its costs by literally dumping them onto the public. We should not permit our environment and our health to be damaged for any reason at all, but especially not for corporate greed. I urge the governor to stop this dumping, and I urge the board to make it clear to the governor that she must do so immediately. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Alan Huter, followed by Robert McMahon.
Alan, if you have called into the public statement for your audio, please press *3 on your phone.
Okay, we'll move on to Robert McMahon, followed by Athena Clabu.
Hi, my name is Robert McMahon. I'm a resident of Cortlandt Manor, and the Hudson River, which is one of the most beautiful rivers in the world, is making a comeback. My wife and I kayak along the Hudson and have seen the comeback of wildlife, including the bald eagle and the osprey. In addition to the wildlife, the Hudson is used for recreation by a large number of people who swim, kayak, boat, as well as fish in it. There are also numerous businesses such as sailing schools, marinas, kayak rentals that revolve around the recreation of the Hudson. And releasing radioactive waste into the Hudson is ironically what New York was trying to prevent when closing Indian Point down. So dumping is not a solution. I call on Governor Hochul to put a stop to this proposed dumping. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to Serena Nagy.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute the other way. My name is Serena Nagy. I'm a resident of the Bronx, and I just wanted to voice my opposition to Holtec's plan to dump nuclear waste into the Hudson River. To be quite honest, I'm completely outraged this plan is even being considered, especially since there seems to be an alternative of storing it on site. The Hudson River means so much to New Yorkers across the state. As a New York City resident, I use it for recreational purposes, and I feel kind of dumb saying that because people use it for their drinking water or for their bathing water. And I mean, I would be concerned if I were them. I think to threaten the health and safety of New York State residents, not to mention the harms to the environment in general, is disgusting. And if Holtec, I just disagree with this plan. And I'd also like to mention that as a mother to a toddler and also an infant, the environment and public health are top voting issues for me. And if our Democratic, with a capital D, governor can't get it together to protect our health and environment, that's something I'll consider during the next election cycle, because I'm just not impressed with Hochul's lackluster performance so far. So I just wanted to once again voice my opposition, but also call on Hochul to step up her policies in regards to the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Athena Clabu, followed by Ben Martin.
Athena, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you and mute you. Your Honor, we have a raised hand, but it says Catherine Skopik. Do you want to see if Athena is using that line to speak? Oh, no raised hand, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to Ben Martin, followed by Christine Felix.
Ben Martin, if you call into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so we can locate you and unmute you. Raised hand.
Okay, we'll go to Christine Felix, followed by Tara Vamos.
Christine Felix, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you and mute you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll go to Tara Vamos, followed by Nora Adelman.
Hello, this is Tara Vamos. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Tara Vamos. I live in Cold Spring, New York. It's right community on the Hudson River. The water flows upriver from the site of the Holtec decommissioning site past my community. But I'm strongly opposed to the plan to release tritium contaminated water into the Hudson River. I think that Governor Hochul needs to stand up and press to make sure that Holtec does the right thing and does not release that contaminated water. New York State voted to pass a New York State constitutional right to clean air and clean water. I believe that that includes not dumping tritium contaminated water into the Hudson River. And Governor Hochul signed a law promising to protect burdened environmental justice communities from further harm. And absolutely, the community that that Indian Point is located in qualifies many times over. I'm a part of Food and Water Watch, and I'm also of Beacon Environmental Action Network. And I just briefly, Holtec, they're in it for the money. They're going to get away with whatever they can. They get money by shaving, like cutting corners and doing as little as they can. Westchester has higher rates of leukemia, of ovarian cancer, and of thyroid cancer, and of multiple myeloma than other counties in the state. So any of those people saying like, well, we were releasing that tritium laden water before without a problem, wouldn't it be great to have fewer cases of cancer instead of something that you can kind of predict would result in more cases of cancer? And just briefly, Holtec has stated that they have a problem with keeping the wastewater on site because it's so hard. My house that I live in right now is 160 years old. So 160 years ago, somebody was able to build a house that stood up until now. The New York City Aquarium had a sand tiger shark from 1963 to 2008. If Holtec could keep that tritiumated water in a tank for 45 years, it would have 6% of the current amount of nucleotides in it. Our health is worth it. Governor Hochul, stand up and stop Holtec from doing the wrong thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Nora Adelman, followed by Rosemary DeCruz.
I lived near the Hudson River in Athens. for over 35 years. Oh, hi, I've lived near the Hudson River in Athens for over 35 years and heard stories from years past when people disposed of unwanted refrigerators and cars by throwing them into the river. Greene County is the home of Athens Generating, built by PG&E, which continues to poison our community and buys silence with gifts to local citizens groups. Now we're more refined, not cars and refrigerators, but radioactive waste containing tritium is proposed to be dumped into our federal Superfund site. Governor Hochul must stop this criminal plan which threatens the river and our public health. Her legacy can be one of saving New Yorkers and the life of the Hudson River. The health and safety of New Yorkers and the Hudson River are infinitely more important than profits for Holtec shareholders. If she's a true representative of the people of New York State, Governor Hochul must support and help pass the Save the Hudson bill in the state Senate and Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rosemary DeCruz, followed by Sharon Carr.
Rosemary DeCruz, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you and unmute you. No raised hand.
Okay, we'll move on to Sharon Carr, followed by Gary Moore.
Sharon Carr, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone. No raised hand.
Sorry, we'll move on to Gary Moore, followed by Bram Hilligers.
Gary Moore, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so I can locate you and unmute you. No raised hand.
Thank you. We'll move on to Bram Hilligers, followed by Mary Kay Abley Ryan.
Bram Hilligers, if you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone. No raised hand. Moving on to Mary Kay Abley Ryan. If you have called into the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone. No raised hand.
Hello, this is the court reporter.
Hi, Howard.
I was wondering about the long silence. I didn't know if I'd got disconnected.
I might have muted myself. Pete Villanueva. Okay, Kim Diaspora? All right. We'll move on to Jessica Chalifo. Jessica Chalifo, if you've called in, please hit *3. All right, we'll move on to Lolly Yacker, followed by Marissa Martona. Lolly Yacker. Okay. Move on to Marissa Martono. And again, if I've called your name and you've called in, please hit *3 so we can identify your line. No, Marissa Martona. Christina Arnold. Christina Arnold, followed by Christine Janik. All right, Christina Arnold. Again, if you've called in, please hit *3 so we can identify your line. All right, no Christina Arnold. Christine Janik, followed by Stephen Casey. Christine Janik, again, please hit *3. Stephen Casey. All right. Kirsten Whitman. Kirsten Whitman, if you're on the line, please hit *3 so we can identify you and unmute you. Nancy Van. Michael McGlynn.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
Nancy, you are unmuted. Please proceed.
Okay. Um, I've been listening to all of the amazing things that people have been able to present this evening, and I wanted to think about what I can say that is personal to me, that isn't just somebody else saying the same things, which are all very valid arguments. But I have a story to tell you, a personal story that starts back in 2001 when I was a Wall Street lawyer working at One World Trade Center. In September of that year, I was getting ready to leave from work, and someone called and said, "Turn on your television. There's a small plane has apparently hit one of the trade centers. You should check before you go in." And I watched my building fall down in real time, and clouds of dust, including asbestos and all kinds of other pollutants, rise up into the air. And I was just so, in addition to the fact that I had lost my work product and my 6-foot tall geraniums that I'd grown in my window facing New Jersey. I was just devastated by that and felt like I can't, this is too anxiety provoking. I need to get away. And I had this little summer cabin in a place called Buchanan, New York, along the Hudson River. And I said, well, I'll go up there. It's in nature. It will be calmer. It'll be safer. I'll be able to see the trees and relax a bit. So I did. I went up to Buchanan, home of Indian Point, and relaxed. And then when it got to be time to close my summer cabin for the winter, I said, I'm not ready to be back in New York City full time yet. The officials there were telling us, oh, it's perfectly safe. There's no problem with pollution. There's no danger here near ground zero. But somehow I didn't buy it. So I bought a home here. I moved here in April again of 2002, and with my partner Erwin, and we were a 2-person household. And of that 2-person household, in the 20 years we've been here,
Your 3 minutes is up. Could you please try to wrap up your comments?
I'll try, but it's hard because this
You
is
have
very
50 other people waiting to speak behind you, so please try.
understand that. But of our 2-person household, 2 of us have had cancer in the 20 years that we've been here. And there are no studies being done because the government blocked them to tell us whether it's safe to live here. People say tritium's been dumped for years. Well, I'm one of those statistics, and so is my partner. We have both had cancer. We both lived here for 20 years, and I thought I was leaving someplace dangerous for someplace safe.
Ma'am, we have a large number of speakers. Everyone has been held to a 3-minute time limit. So if you could please wrap up your comments, or I will have to mute you.
Yes, do not let them make this a more dangerous place. We cannot dump this water into the Hudson River, no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael McGlynn is next, followed by David Vassar. Michael McGlynn.
Michael McGlynn, your line has been, Michael, I have him listed in the thing. Michael, if you have called in for audio, please press star 2 on your phone. I have you listed electronically, but there's no audio next to the name.
Okay, we can try to go back to Michael. Let's move on to David Vassar, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, my name's David Vassar. I live in Upper Manhattan. I'm a father of a 24-year-old young man at Columbia University whose prospects for a livable environment in coming years I'm very much in fear of. I think this plan by Holtec is a real threat to an already endangered environment that my son and his generation are going to inherit. No matter that tritium is considered by experts a relatively benign radioactive substance, it is radioactive nonetheless. It is a proven carcinogen, and dumping it in that amount in such a limited span of time is far different from slow seepage, small amounts over a very long period. I have to believe that. It will not cost nothing to store it on site. There will be a cost to that, but it is well worth it for the security and the well-being, not only of the wildlife in that region, for the drinking water and the recreational needs and just the needs for peace of mind of area human communities. The river as a great American waterway is part of an ecosystem that is vital, that does vital ecosystem services for our climate as a whole. And to compromise the health of our beautiful Hudson River, and primarily for the sake of convenience and profitability of a company like Holtec, is completely unconscionable. And our government, Governor Hochul, really needs to find her heart, her soul, her conscience, and basically her good sense, her good political sense, which she has somewhere, and stop this from happening. This would be a big insult and injury to our great Hudson River. I'm very sentimental about the Hudson. I bike along the Hudson all the time. Those clear waters with the sun glistening at sunset. I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card, but it is a beautiful river and it's priceless. We need to protect that river. I'm really just disappointed in our government in general, our New York government, for its seeming non-committal attitude toward preserving our common environment in general. This is our kids' future. It's not just the river, as beautiful as the Hudson is. So let's please stop this in its tracks before it starts. If taxpayers wind up paying part of this bill, you know, I don't want to say so be it, but so be it. You know, we really all have to step in and protect this beautiful waterway and unique American national heritage site. The Hudson River has already, as many have pointed out already, suffered greatly from toxic dumping. I mean, and it would set...
Sir, your 3 minutes is up. Could you please wrap it up?
Okay, quick wrap up. Thank you. It would just really send the wrong message to industry in general if we let Holtec use our Hudson River as an ashtray, a toxic ashtray. This cannot happen. We have to stop it. Governor Hochul, step in and do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to Michael McGlynn. I see that he's still on the line. Are we able to get Michael There he is. No, we lost him.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Mike McGlynn. I live in Waterville, which is at the northern part of the Hudson estuary. I request your consideration to protect our natural resources and human rights from the discharge of radioactive tritium wastewater into the Hudson River by the individuals of Holtec International. Tritium ingested, inhaled, or absorbed through the skin poses internal radiological health risks to the human body via beta radiation, causing most radiation exposure of the general public. In our state constitution, Article 14, Section 4 states the policy of the state shall be to conserve and protect its natural resources. The Hudson River estuary is an essential natural resource for many individuals, communities, and municipal governments. The Indian Point Decommissioning Oversight Board has access to Unit 1 and 2 Decommissioning Fund and a provisional decommissioning fund for comprehensive, timely, and safe decommissioning, site restoration, and maintenance. Is it possible for the board and NYSERDA to partner with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the National Science Foundation to research responsible processes to implement the state Low-Level Radioactive Waste Management Act? The Federal Department of Energy Office of Science has indicated that scientists are researching ideas on how to breed tritium in fusion reactors at the required rate to make future power plants tritium self-sufficient. Tritium, when fused together, creates helium. Therefore, on-site tritium wastewater management may produce energy with a helium byproduct as an alternative to discharging the radioactive waste into our Hudson estuary. I urge everyone to enhance social responsibility of our constitutional health, safety, and ecology with on-site storage. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Santosh Narabalan, followed by Izuru Seneviratne.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you. My name is Santosh Nandabalan. I'm a community organizer with Food and Water Watch, which represents 200,000 members and supporters throughout New York State, and a community organizer with the Stop Holtec Coalition, which is over 100 groups that just yesterday released a letter to Governor Hochul urging her to make sure we can stop Holtec. And I think everyone really quickly has sounded the alarm. I know a ton of people have referenced all the problems, but it is really black and white. This is like coming straight out of a Simpsons episode. We should not be dropping radioactive waste into the Hudson River, period. It is a terrible problem that we have to have a giant campaign to stop this, especially when there's so much bipartisan opposition. You have Congressmember Lawler, Republican Ed Day, you have Republican Steve Newhouse, you have a widespread at every level of government, from local, state, federal, opposing this, yet Governor Hochul has remained silent on this issue. And that's really worrisome to me as someone who kind of bit my tongue and phone banked for the governor during her election. And as someone that pushed that, I am really concerned. Did I make the right decision? If I have a governor that can't even stand in bipartisan opposition to protect something as precious as our Hudson River, our public health, our water, our livelihoods needs to come over the profits of a giant nuclear company that has its tentacles all over the country for dumping waste into our waterways, for repowering nuclear plants. And it's really just for their shareholders and their profits. Holtec International has been a bad actor. It has a bad safety record with the NRC. There's terrible stuff where it's been accused of bribing other actors as well. We simply can't trust this company, which has this terrible track record already. And this should be black and white. So Governor Hochul, really hope you get the message. Implore upon you and the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Public Service Commission, make sure your state agencies step up to the plate and stop how the dumping happens. Don't pass the buck to the feds. Those guys need to get their job together too, but this is on Governor Hochul. I think the whole audience here gets it. We're going to be rallying on Thursday outside the town hall in Cortland at 4:30 to call on Governor Hochul to step up on this. It's really unconscionable that she hasn't done that. And we urge everyone here, also call the governor. Make sure she hears from you. This is really ridiculous that this has to be a fight and a hearing we have. And a lot of people have been texting me saying they got skipped over, so maybe there's some figuring out what to do after this. But want this to stick really loud and clear that Governor Hochul needs to stop Holtec now. Thank you.
Next, we have Izuru Seneviratne, followed by Eric Dawson. Izuru Seneviratne.
Thank you for the opportunity. I am Izuru Seneviratne. I live in Queens and I'm pursuing a master's in sustainability. Hope everyone had a positive and empowering Earth Day. I helped organize a reforestation screening and discussion on Friday, engaged in a clean energy outreach on Saturday, and directed a youth enactment of the LORAX on Sunday. I support New York's commitment to carbon neutrality, environmental justice, nature, and community protection. Our energy, climate, and industrial policies need to be free from both corporate and special interest group pressure. They need to be based on evidence and dispassionate scientific inquiry, not popularity contests or what's politically expedient. All benefits should be weighed against negative impacts. Every human activity leaves a footprint. A recent extensive UN study showed nuclear energy to have among the lowest cradle-to-grave impacts on land use, mining, and human toxicity. Maybe surprisingly, nuclear is among the lowest on carcinogenic health risks. Yes, that considers the release of water with trace amounts of tritium. Indian Point's release of processed water to the Hudson over 5 decades has not been linked to any negative health impacts. Low-dose radiation is not unique to nuclear power. Life evolved with radiation. Half our annual exposure today comes from the food we eat. A single chest X-ray has over 800 times the radiation as the annual whole body dose from all of Indian Point's liquid effluent releases. As Fox News recently found out, repeating the same lie does not make it true. But spreading fear and misinformation has real-world consequences. New York is demonstrating to the world how fear-driven nuclear plant closures increase fossil combustion and harm humans and the environment. Fossil use for the entire state's electricity sector increased by a third, and downstate New York is presently 90+% fossil powered. Each year, Indian Point prevented over 7 million tons of carbon dioxide. We've increased not only climate pollution, but also air pollution, which annually causes 7 million premature deaths globally. As the African American Environmentalist Association argued pre-closure, how many African American children in the Bronx should suffer from asthma in order to marginally improve the level of fish egg mortality in the Hudson River? Money distorts incentives. Anti-nuclear fear-mongering has been extremely profitable over the decades. A chief concern troll, Riverkeeper, wanted half of the $15 million community fund from the plant's closure. Now Food and Water Watch wants to hold the village of Buchanan hostage to aid their fundraising efforts.
Sir, your 3 minutes is up. Could you please try to wrap it up?
Yes, thank you. Some anti-nuclear activists are trying to stigmatize and traumatize perfectly healthy children to get their way. New York, we can be better than this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Eric Dawson, followed by Michelle Hamilton.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
All right. My name is Eric Dawson, and I'm a member of a pro-nuclear environmentalist group, Nuclear New York. I live in Manhattan, along the Hudson River. I went to Bard College in Annandale, also along the Hudson River, where I met my now wife. And we later got married in Saugerties, also along the Hudson River. I'll make this brief, as we've heard from many of the same people and the same points tonight already. I want to address 2 subjects. First, the negligible amount of tritium released into large bodies of water. And second, what all this is really about. Most nuclear reactors around the world release trace amounts of tritium into large bodies of water. Since the concentrations are relatively small, there is no evidence of any tangible harm coming from this, which is why no one on this call tonight has provided any actual evidence of harm from tritium. And the proposed releases from Indian Point are comparable to what has already occurred for the past 40 years without a problem. So this whole topic is a rare example of what is known as a literal metaphor. Tritium released from nuclear plants is both figuratively and literally a drop in the ocean. But the real issue here is that a radical minority has and is continuing to push for the premature shutdown of fully functional zero-emission nuclear power plants around the world and for banning new nuclear as well. Their reason is an irrational devotion to a particular misanthropic ideology. The great irony is that these ecotopians are not actually worried about pollution. Instead, they're worried about industrialization. If they actually wanted to reduce harm to human beings, they would be in favor of dramatically scaling up nuclear energy to displace the deadliest energy source, fossil fuels. France did this over 3 decades ago, with virtually no solar power or wind power, I might add. I encourage everyone to check out a recent MIT study on retiring nuclear plants from earlier this month, confirming that the more nuclear plants that are shut down, the more deaths from air pollution will rise. A modern 21st century standard of living requires power plants, electric grids, pipelines, sewer systems, water treatment plants, and a host of other forms of infrastructure. We should not allow a fringe, technophobic, Zionist cult to blind us all so we miss the forest for the trees. Let reason and science be our guide, and allow a reasonable tritium release under the guidance of scientific experts in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michelle Hamilton, followed by Ann Rabe, or Robbie.
Michelle Hamilton. My name is Michelle Hamilton. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
I am a resident of South Nyack, New York, in Rockland County, where our legislators voted unanimously against the dumping. I too oppose the plans of Holtec to dump 1 million plus gallons of tritiated water into the Hudson River. I am outraged that when Holtec saw that communities and elected leaders of the affected areas expressed concern, Holtec blatantly moved its planned dates for the dumping up. And I do hold accountable our elected leaders, including Governor Hochul, to take measures to protect the people and the environment with regard to this issue. I want to speak in particular to a very small number of people tonight have questioned whether the tritium in the water is of any concern or danger. There is indeed scientific evidence to that effect, and here it is. At least one part. There is a 2023 report that's this year. It was written by nuclear engineer Arjun Makhijani. It was published by the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research. And on page 74 of that quite extensive report, Arjun Makhijani, Dr. Makhijani states in particular, quote, "A tightening of drinking water standards is urgently needed, especially for tritium, which is the most common routine radiological pollutant that is routinely emitted and discharged in larger quantities from commercial nuclear facilities than any other pollutant." End quote. Makhijani discusses the potential for teratogenic damage from radiated water, even in small amounts. He also points to deficiencies and gaps in the research that's the basis for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's current standard, which is 20,000 picocuries per liter of water of the tritium. He urges a much more protective standard of 400 picocuries maximum. So I would hope that our leaders consult this report when they look into the science behind whether indeed it is safe to release the tritiated water. Tritiated water is a danger to the health of the river ecosystem, as well as to the human communities that live alongside the Hudson. It is unconscionable that corporate profits be allowed by our elected leaders to take precedence over the health of our environment and our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ann Robbie, or Rob, followed by Jacob Weber.
Research group. The state has a statutory and regulatory tools and framework to develop with full input a protective plan for the tritium wastewater. First, I'd like to add to Michelle's testimony about the environmental and public health hazards of tritium. Dr. Gordon Edwards, an expert, states tritium is a radioactive hydrogen, and like all radioactive substances, tritium is a carcinogen, a mutagen, and teratogen. This month, writing in the journal Science of the Total Environment, scientists stated there has also been little consideration given to how a wide range of organisms uptake tritium through various routes and whether they in turn pose sustained threats to human health through the food chain, such as fish. The state has the authority to require Holtec to comply with a plan for the tritium waste management, and the state has the statutory and regulatory health environmental criteria to require protective standards. First, the DEC has been delegated by the EPA to implement the state pollutant discharge elimination system. Second, the state has been delegated by the NRC in 1962 to regulate the discharge and remediation of radioactive materials, such as byproduct materials, which includes tritium waste. Third, as an NRC agreement state, the state can require stricter standards in the NRC, something the EPA for the last 15 years has been recommending. This is a crucial point. The NRC's policy has a radiological standard for unrestricted use of 25 millirems per year, which is based on a cancer risk of 1 in 500 people. This means the exposure to remaining radioactive materials after remediation or management is estimated to result in 1 person in 500 contracting cancer. The EPA has stated the NRC's policy is not protective. It allows radioactivity to remain at levels that greatly exceed those more protective cancer risk levels on the federal EPA and the state DEC and DOH. New York's statutory and regulatory policies for toxic air pollution, Air Guide 1, and toxic waste remediation, the 2003 Brownfield Cleanup Program statute, are based on a 1 in a million cancer risk level. In the past, the DOH officials have concurred with environmental groups that the state should have a consistent and protective policy on radiological materials exposure based on the 1 in a million cancer risk. Since science tells us that tritium is biocumulative and spreads quickly throughout biota, and since a full health and environmental risks are to some extent still unknown, it is incumbent on the state to set standards and develop a plan that is protective of ecological resources, including fish and wildlife. The first step the state should take during this pause period is for the governor to immediately direct DEC to establish a Hudson River Community Task Force comprised of residents groups and elected officials to help determine what should be done with the tritium wastewater. We don't all have the answers. We've been left with a closed nuclear waste plant, nuclear power plant, and we need to, with public input, decide what is the best way to deal with the tritium wastewater. DEC should also convene an expert advisor group of
3 minutes. Please try to wrap up your comments.
Independent scientists and medical professionals. This is a precedent-setting process that future generations will have to live with, and the state and impacted communities must do this carefully, judiciously, and with a priority to select the option that best protects the river's ecosystem and residents. It is long past time for Holtec and the NRC to stand down and support the state's legal authority to develop a protective plan which safeguards the impacted communities along the Hudson River. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Weber, followed by Vanessa Agudelo.
Jacob Weber. If you have called in to the public statement hearing, please press *3 on your phone so we can locate you and unmute you. No raised hand, Your Honor.
Vanessa Agudelo, followed by Ted Glick.
Good evening, all. My name is Vanessa Agudelo. I'm a former Peekskill City Council member and current organizer for Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions, also known as WAS. WAS is a grassroots organization found and led by Peekskill residents to move Westchester County towards zero waste and to close the Westchester incinerator in Peekskill where the county's trash is burned. I think it's important to underscore, as has already been by a number of speakers earlier, that Peekskill is an environmental justice community with a largely Black and Brown population already overburdened by dangerous and polluting infrastructure. Within Peekskill and along our borders, we have the trash incinerator, which is the largest source of air pollution in the county, a high-pressure fracked gas transmission pipeline, a chemical plant, a gypsum plant, and now an aged decommissioning nuclear power plant, in addition to numerous brownfield sites and other industrial facilities. So here in our area in Peekskill and the surrounding areas in Cortland, we are no stranger to being a sacrifice zone and to our health and quality of life being put second to prioritizing corporate expediency and their bottom line. Really the worst part about this, there are many bad things about this plan, but one of the really bad parts is that many of us who are on this call have been on similar calls many months ago, drawing attention to our concern of Holtec's inability to responsibly decommission this plan. I think many of us are not surprised that Holtec is pulling this move. And we know that Holtec simply wants to appease its stakeholders. It does not want to prioritize the health and safety of residents, nor does it want to prioritize the well-being of the Hudson River. We've never felt that Holtec was a trustworthy company, and I think that they're now showing their true colors. And it's really time for Governor Hochul to step up and stop this dangerous plan from happening. I think I can speak for many people on this call who I believe were the majority on this call. I think earlier it may have been said that we were a vocal minority, but I think it's clear that we are a majority here who are standing up against the polluting of the Hudson River, against the dumping of radioactive waste, and really calling on Governor Hochul to stand up from the sidelines and stop this from happening so we can continue to move progress towards realizing true climate justice and environmental justice in communities like ours who have already suffered so much and have been overburdened by polluting infrastructure and for-profit corporations who care more about their profit than the health and well-being of the communities that they're impacting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Ted Glick, followed by Layla Goldmark. Ted Glick. If you've called in, please hit *3 on your phone. All right, Layla Goldmark, followed by Amanda Jo Green. Layla Goldmark. All right, we'll move on to Amanda Jo Green.
One more.
Now you're unmuted.
I'm unmuted. Okay, very good. Thank you. Hold on one second. I'm Amanda Jo Green, Environmental Action Director for Hudson River Sloop Clearwater. I will provide the full text with citations of experts in writing as instructed. Number one, tritium cannot be filtered out of water. Tritiated water is chemically like ordinary water, and tritium is highly radioactive. This makes tritium a very pernicious pollutant that is difficult to contain, and once released into water, very difficult to remediate. At the first two public health and safety forums, Arnie Gunderson cited recent research by Dr. Ian Fairley in his tritium expose. Holtec's proposed action will have cumulative effects on environmental justice communities, which are already exposed to PCBs in fish, dioxin from the Wheelabrator incinerator at Charles Point, PFOS, and other persistent chemicals. Especially sensitive and vulnerable populations include pregnant women and fetuses, children, the elderly, and people whose health is already compromised. Tritium is a byproduct of the nuclear industry, and its effect on aquatic organisms, particularly low-dose effects, has been intensively studied. When ingested by marine animals, tritium accumulates in muscle tissue and liver. The proposed action may also violate the Endangered Species Act because Haverstraw Bay is a breeding ground for the Atlantic sturgeon, endangered species. Fish eggs are also especially vulnerable. We should utilize the precautionary principle. When radioactivity is contained, it should not be released into the environment. Holtec should be required to store radioactive water contained on site and not release it into the Hudson River, where it can bioaccumulate in the aquatic ecosystem and put swimmers and paddlers and others, including Clearwater's Tide Line program, at risk of exposure. Clearwater is researching the studies by Dr. Richard Bopp of Lamont Doherty Earth Institute and others, which document the widespread dispersion of radioactivity in the Hudson. There are alternative solutions, and I want to point out that evaporation is a route of exposure. So if tritiated water is stored in a bladder in a double-lined tank, evaporation will be greatly reduced because there's far less exposed surface area than in each of the two fuel pools. And fuel pool 2 has already leaked. The major roles and responsibilities
Your
of the
3 minutes
DOB.
is up. Please try to summarize and wrap up.
Yes, of the DOB are to ensure public health and environmental protection by reviewing available research and creating a collaborative process to recommend and require the safest possible solution to protect the surrounding community and the Hudson River, which is an estuary all the way to Troy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Vince Scafaria, followed by Catherine Bellingham.
Hi, my name is Vince Scafaria. My family and I live in Croton-on-Hudson. As a science-minded citizen concerned about our planet, I was taught to support nuclear energy. I was told that it's clean, that these plants are located near waterways in ways that cool the reactor but without harming the river. Now I've learned that there's an asterisk, except when decommissioned by a private for-profit corporation. So can nuclear power plants only exist on Superfund site rivers, or do residents need to understand that one day the radiation will deliberately leak into waterways? When Excel Energy released 400,000 gallons of tritium water in Minnesota last month and chose not to tell anyone, making national news, was that an accident or standard operating procedure? Casually decommissioning while angering voters will not help the cause of nuclear energy proponents, some of whom we've heard from today. It will only benefit fossil fuel companies. From personal experience, last month I believed nuclear energy was part of the way forward, but now Holtec has educated me about the decommissioning process. My message to nuclear energy advocates is this: nuclear will remain a dead option unless we decommission in a way that respects our communities, our families, our fisheries, and our local economy. The only winners from tritium release would be fossil fuel companies and Holtec. The winners from not releasing would be everyone else and our fragile environment. I can't understand why this is a difficult political question, especially for a Democrat-led administration. Companies like Holtec and their regulators have lost the people's trust. In February, the people of East Palestine, Ohio, where Norfolk Southern train exploded 1 million pounds of carcinogens in a mushroom cloud that could be seen from the air, were told their community is safe. Doing research for the video I made on the derailment and explosion, I learned Norfolk's original compensation offer was just $5 per resident. So yeah, trust is in short supply when it comes to corporations like Holtec. How can we win back trust, including for nuclear? One way would be to store the tritium on site while it decays. A Holtec spokesperson said, quote, "That's not our business model." I'm sorry, but as a resident and voter and proponent of clean energy, that's unacceptable. I believe Governor Hochul is our only hope. I also believe she will be held squarely responsible if this vibrant freshwater river is violated with 1 million gallons of radioactive waste. Perhaps Holtec and Albany think this will be a small local story that will pass through the news cycle. After all, wouldn't homeowners want to keep quiet so they don't draw too much attention and hurt housing prices? No, the Rubicon has been crossed. This will not stay small. It will not go away. And the major political donors and the activists who live and work in Westchester County, Hudson Valley, and Manhattan have not heard about this yet. I've canvassed them. The situation is building momentum and will continue to as releases continue. This will start loud and will get louder. Please, Governor Hochul, do the right thing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Catherine Bellingham, followed by Mark Giordano. Catherine Bellingham. Okay, we'll move on to Mark Giordano, please.
Appreciate the opportunity to share a brief statement. My name is Mark Giordano and I am the president of Giordano Builders. Giordano Builders is located here in northern Westchester. We've been doing business for over 50 years. We currently work on the Indian Point site, assisting Holtec with decommissioning process, and we worked here previously as a contractor to Entergy for many years while the plant was in operation. Holtec retained us as a vendor in part because of our years of experience and intimate knowledge of the site, as well as our excellent safety record and our overall competence. We have constructed the pad on which the contaminant casts now sit, and we've been working with Holtec to safely dismantle and decommission many elements of the facility. I chose to address you all this evening because I wanted to share my company's experience working with Holtec here at Indian Point. I have personally experienced just how seriously Holtec is taking public as well as worker safety. From their continued focus on training and their strict instructions for self-reporting any issues, no matter how small, to their strict adherence to the NRC guidelines and the environmental best practices. In our experience working with them, we have found Holtec to be extremely responsible corporate citizen. As a local resident, I believe we could not ask for a better steward for the Indian Point site. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Fabiola Perez Mendez, followed by Terry Cardo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Fabiola Perez Mendez. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm an intern with Food and Water Watch. I believe, based on how it's going so far, a majority of us already agree that there should not be any radioactive waste dumping into the Hudson River, which is a federal and Superfunded site, provides drinking water for 7 Hudson Valley municipals, and is home to a wide variety of fish and wildlife. The waste includes titanium, a highly toxic and radioactive isotope that can lead to higher rates of cancer if ingested, inhaled, and absorbed through the skin. And Governor Hochul must step up to the plate and stop this dangerous plan. New Yorkers won't stand for polluting the Hudson River with radioactive waste, and we won't allow this administration to sit on the sidelines and let it happen. We need Governor Hochul to stop this plan on its track. And honestly, I feel like it's extremely disappointing that we have to discuss this in the first place. Like, hey, like we need to decide like not to waste any toxic waste and dump. That's the point is like it's not if they should not have Holtec should not have any responsibilities or any like should not take any action to dump their waste in the People's Hudson River, in the environment Hudson River. And Governor Hochul should not support that idea at all. If they want to drink like toxic radioactive water, they should do that themselves. But they should not put that and push it onto the people who are here today, most presenting their perspective and their stories on how this is a bad idea in general overall. So I could only ask for Governor Hochul to please not dump and stop Holtec from dumping the radioactive waste into the river. For the sake of everyone in the current present, the future, when it comes to like the people and the environment itself. I appreciate for your time and thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Terry Cardos, followed by Tracy Brown.
Hello, this is Terry Cardos. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good. My name is Terry Cardos, and I live in Cortland Manor. I am an environmental educator and field biologist, and I have been teaching nature programs to children along the Hudson River for over 30 years. I object strenuously to any dumping of the radioactive water from the spent fuel pools at Indian Point into the Hudson River. Dr. Kathy Nolan, president of Physicians for Social Responsibility, has stated that the standard radiation guidelines are based on exposure to adult white males, yet those most vulnerable to radiation are pregnant women and their fetuses, children, and those with various illnesses and conditions. The Hudson River is a federal Superfund site and provides drinking water to 7 municipalities and is the habitat for a wide array of fish and wildlife, many of which are already seriously declining in numbers. The climate crisis is causing stress to the ecosystem, and we should not be causing more cumulative stress with radiation. The dry casks of radioactive fuel will remain on site. So I think the best plan is for the radioactive water to remain on site in appropriately safe vessels as well while the tritium decays. Governor Hochul must support the Save the Hudson bill in the state legislature and make sure it becomes law. I'd also like to mention that I'm a volunteer with Food and Water Watch and a member of Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tracy Brown, followed by Elizabeth Schaefer.
Cito and members of the Decommissioning Oversight Board for this public comment opportunity. I'm Tracy Brown, President and Hudson River Keeper. I stand with the residents of the Hudson Valley in opposition to Holtec's planned tritium discharges. It has been Riverkeeper's mission for the past 50 years to stop pollution entering the Hudson River. It is no longer acceptable that the Hudson serve as a dumping ground for industrial wastes. We are not aware of any testing performed to determine tritium's particular effects on women, children, and expectant mothers who are most vulnerable to exposure to toxins in our environment. This lack of testing is what is driving Riverkeeper's precautionary approach to the releases, as well as the impacts on our wildlife and ecosystems. In order to more fully understand the impacts of the historic discharges of tritiated wastewater into the Hudson and determine the best possible path forward for the safe storage and/or disposal of the spent fuel pool wastewater, Riverkeeper is seeking answers to the following questions that we hope to hear back from Holtec and/or DEC or the Decommissioning Board. First, what is the volume and concentration of tritium in the spent fuel pool wastewater in curies or becquerels per liter? Second, what is the volume of each planned wastewater discharge and how much time will lapse between discharges? Third, once released from Indian Point's outfall, what is tritium's residence time in the Hudson River? Fourth, how far will the tritium travel upstream and downstream from the plant under different flow conditions? 5, are there specific studies on the impact tritium has had on developing fetuses, children, and/or women? Can you determine and report to the public the risk of swimming in the Hudson immediately following tritium releases for all Hudson Valley residents, including these vulnerable groups? 6, can you estimate the expected tritium concentrations following releases at Croton Point Park Beach, Haverstraw Beach, and Kingsland Point Park, all popular swimming locations downstream from the plant? Can you estimate what radiation doses would be received by an average swimmer who spends 2 hours in the pool at those locations after discharge? And have there been any studies aimed at quantifying the tritium concentration in fish affected by the historic Indian Point discharges? In addition to Riverkeeper's opposition to the tritium discharges, we also have grave concerns about the spent fuel pool leaks, which have allowed untreated wastewater containing radioactive elements including tritium, strontium-90, cesium-137, cobalt-60, and nickel-63 to leach through the soil at the site and into the river. An effective remediation of this pollution as part of the decommissioning process is critical. I request that the Decommissioning Oversight Board address these groundwater contamination issues as soon as possible. Thank you for your consideration of Riverkeeper's testimony. We look forward to continuing to work with the Decommissioning Oversight Board, state and federal agencies, and our fellow members of the public to achieve the safest possible, efficient decommissioning of Indian Point and restoration of the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elizabeth Schaefer, followed by Michael Dulong.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Hello, I'm from Saugerties, New York, and a member of the Saugerties Conservation Advisory Commission. I'm a lifelong resident of New York State and have lived near the Hudson River for 57 years, 54 of these years on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, 45 miles south of Indian Point. I'm a retired attorney who is a long-term board member of the Lawyers Committee on Nuclear Policy. I've been involved for decades in radioactive safety and other nuclear issues. I'm also a mother and a grandmother. I'm very concerned about Holtec's plans to discharge more than 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater from the spent fuel cooling pool on the site onto the Hudson River this coming August. Governor Hochul must immediately sign the New York State Senate Bill 5181 and Assembly Bill 5338 introduced by Senator Harkin and Assemblymember Levenberg to prohibit discharges of radioactive waste into New York waterways. Exposure to radioactive contaminants is linked with cancer, miscarriages, genetic defects, and other adverse health effects. Developing fetuses, children, and women are particularly vulnerable. The Hudson River is a tidal estuary flowing in each direction from New York Harbor to the Troy Dam. Is also a major destination for fishing, boating, and other recreational activities. The Senate and Assembly bills must be signed into law immediately to prevent Holtec's disastrous plan to discharge radioactive wastewater into the Hudson River. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Dulong, followed by Susanna Glidden.
Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Judge Belcito, for impressively keeping this meeting on track, and to the members of the Decommissioning Oversight Board for the opportunity to provide public comments. And thanks especially to my fellow environmental advocates for speaking up for the Hudson River. I'm Mike Dulong. I'm a senior attorney with Hudson Riverkeeper, and I would just like to follow up on what Hudson Riverkeeper Tracy Brown just said. We are urging the Decommissioning Oversight Board to work with Holtec to pursue storage of the tritiated spent fuel wastewater rather than discharging it. And it's been our mission, Riverkeeper's mission, for the past 50 years to stop pollution from entering the Hudson River. We strongly recommend that the tritiated water be stored on site for at least a 12-year period, equal to the half-life of tritium. A 12-year holding period, in addition to lessening the radioactivity of the tritium by 50%, would allow time for safer disposal alternatives to be explored. I'd also like to take this time to remind everyone that there is going to be another meeting in 2 days on Thursday night of the Decommissioning Oversight Board. We hope to get some response to everyone's comments tonight. And there is a rally beforehand. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all then. And with that, I'll close. Have a good night.
Thank you. And now, Susanna Glidden. Susanna Glidden?
Evening.
Go ahead, please.
As has been suggested by others, in setting up a task force comprising the public,
your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please.
We must have an independent lab with no financial conflict of interest with Holtec, its affiliates and consultants, test the spent fuel pool water not from its surface, but from its depth, to know all constituents. Cancer-causing tritium cannot be filtered out by any treatment system. So once we know what's in the water, an independent engineer, again approved by the public with the task force that's to be set up, can design tanks to store it on site for a few decades to decay. For the umpteenth time, I am reiterating that we must have Courtney Williams appointed the environmental justice and fence line community representative as a member on the DOB so that we, the people, are represented. We must have DOB comply with another repeated request to open the chat at the DOB meetings so we can see who else is participating and what their comments are. The DOB must conduct these meetings in an open democratic process. We must have an emergency preparedness expert design an emergency plan for the co-location of 3 gas pipelines and spent nuclear fuel. We must have monthly DOB meetings and to include health and safety experts that the public recommends they're having. The DEC, under Governor Hochul's direction, has the statutory regulatory tools and framework, which has been mentioned before this evening, to develop with full public input a protective plan examining all available options to safeguard the Hudson River from any further Holtec discharging. And this must be done, Governor Hochul, as well as you're signing into law quickly the Harcum-Levenberg Bill S-5181 as soon as it passes. We must have justice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. That was the last person I have on my list of registered speakers. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating tonight. Particular thanks to our Office of Consumer Services and our court reporter, who have been very helpful and very patient with a very long evening. Again, thank you to the participants who adhered to the 3-minute time limit. We moved along quicker than I expected. However, it is a very long meeting, and we are going to end it. I will remind everyone that public comments can be submitted throughout this proceeding. Please reference the case number or the matter number 21-01188 in submitting those comments. And that's all I have. So thank you very much again for your participation. Thank you, Howard, for your patience and sticking with us all night. And I hope everyone has a great evening. We are off the record.
Okay, and I have us off the record. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. And for anyone still on the line, the information on other ways to comment is now posted on the slide. Thank you and good night.